on it all.
I can't do it. I don't know how to
What
do it.
happened to all the work?
I'll do yours if you leave next to me. Well, everybody's sick or something.
I don't know, but
They do different things. Illnesses. Wait, wow. So I was trying to tap you about
Yeah, there's a knock sub, a new sub.
And now we're going to have another one.
since we didn't have a, I didn't know we had taken up enough obesity bill as an obscenity bill. What's this week? What do you think
I'm ready to take the part, Sam.
You're ready to run the other way. She's been like, we got an obesity bill today. I'm like, what is that?
Okay, let me have this.
you have the original like in this
It's up to the committee.
You got an original of this? Did you pass it?
At the airport. Let's get going.
I don't know that I have any more. Who's presenting this So
The originals of this.
a long time ago? Yeah, I don't know. We have all these new subs to it now, so I didn't know that, but I may still have it. So who's presenting this sub?
Do you think we'll take more than
Okay. So, Tim, you want me to go ahead and pass it out?
Sure, that way everyone's got a copy on their table. Tommy will be with me because I have no idea what it does. Me?
I mean, we'll get as far as we can and keep a quorum. All right, back on the agenda. Okay. Where's the vice chairman? Okay, excuse me? Oh, pens, okay. We come to order, please. Welcome everybody this afternoon for the last meeting this session of the Judiciary Non-Civil Committee. Yeah, never say never. The last scheduled meeting is Penny. Come around. I'm going to call House Resolution 1794 Representative Houston, who has a very important appointment out of state to keep. You guys, well, come around.
Come to the hot seat.
I make everybody do that, so. You have in your folders a copy of House Resolution 1794, proposing creation of a House Study Committee on court surcharges and additional fines.
Thank you.
Glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this Thank you. In 1950, add-ons, surcharges on fines were created, and since then it's been a continuous way of adding revenue. At the present time, there are 20 different fees that can be added on, and sometimes the fees and surcharges are more than the fines, and they've been administered and turned in an array of different places. Some of them are sent to there's just no rhyme or reason about where you send some of these fines, and we'd like to try to find out how much money are in these accounts, where the money's going, and have a standard way of remitting these fines.
Chairman Knox. Okay. Any questions of the author on House Resolution 1794? Representative Benfield.
Thank you. Just very brief. I see the committee will be composed of 3 members.
Would remember this. The committee is composed of 3 members of the House,
and that's the only members that are designated. Was there any thought given to putting perhaps a Superior Court clerk or other people like that?
No problem with it. Whatever you recommend. I just wanted a House resolution because I didn't have time to do a joint Senate resolution, and I'm open to that. That's a good thought. Whatever. And 3 people might not be enough. We've just got a real problem with the way these court fines are remitted and how much money we have. Some of them are overfunded. And
Okay.
You made an amendment, or do we need one?
I move that we add on line 19, after 3 members of the House to be appointed by the Speaker of the House, delete the comma and add, or I'm sorry, before the comma add, and 1 Superior Court clerk. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait, no, I'm sorry. That's not who shall designate 1 member to represent the committee.
Who has the speaker identified?
Sure. I'm sorry. Where should we put it? 3 members of the House to be appointed by the Speaker of the House. Composed of, how about putting composed of 1 Superior Court clerk member, 1 Superior Court clerk and 3 members of the House. Okay, sorry. Line 19, after composed of, insert 1 Superior Court clerk and 3 members of the House to be appointed by the Speaker of the House.
So the Speaker would also appoint the clerk.
That's correct.
All right. Okay. Is there, first of all, is there an objection to that amendment? And you accept that amendment?
I'll accept it, and anybody else y'all can think of that needs to be on there is fine with me. I just have been fussing about this for several years.
Vice Chairman Mumford?
I want to direct this to Representative Cox, who's in the room. You've been paying attention to this bill?
Yes, sir.
I know you have. Who would be the appropriate person from probation or corrections? What would that person be called? That I know probation officers have to collect these fees, and I'm sure they would like membership on this.
I would recommend that the member of
Usually the Speaker follows appointments.
that represents the private probation industry and represents the Department of Corrections. You get the public and the private sector perspective from collections.
Could you? Somebody coughed, and I didn't quite get what you said. Who is it?
Well, that would be in code, it's simply listed as the private probation officer and the public probation officer that are members of the county and municipal probation advisory council.
Do they collect these fees? I thought these were done by superior, the municipal court judges.
They have to collect them first, and then they turn them over to the Superior Court, who's supposed to make the. But a lot of times, I think the private probation companies are actually making the checks, aren't they?
They collect most of them, right?
Oh, okay. It's the problem. Thank you.
All right, so you're saying the private probation officer and public probation officer
who've been appointed to the county and municipal probation advisory council. That would be my recommendation. They've already been recognized as leaders.
Members of the county. It's called the
County and Municipal Probation Advisory Council.
Don't you have a chairman of that organization?
There is.
Let's just make it the chairman of the organization. It'll make it simpler to get it done now. Are you all right with that?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the committee allowing me to have some input. Thank you.
Uh-oh, it looks like we just added another member of the House.
That sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right, so I would, if I might.
Yes.
I would propose an amendment after the comma, after Superior Court clerk, the chairman of the county and municipal, where'd he go? Probation Advisory Council.
And 3 members of the House.
Right.
Okay.
To be appointed by the Speaker of the House?
Yes.
Okay. We don't have anybody from upstate. Okay. Okay, all right. Everybody wait just a second. Make sure Diane's got the language.
Superior Court Board, chairman of the county municipal probation advisory and 3 members, right?
Okay. Chairman Board up.
Chairman, the only point I want to make, and I thank the lady for bringing this bill. I agree with everything that's been said in terms of who needs to be on here. One of the problems, though, in any of these study committees is how much they're going to cost. And each time we add a member to them, it's another per diem, another cost to the study committee. And when the folks upstairs are deciding which study committees to authorize, they look at how big are the study committees and the number of days they're authorized to meet. That's always been the case. If we just leave it at the 3 House members, all those House members can listen to all these people, the clerks, the probation officers, everybody. Let the House members be the members of the committee and get the cooperation from these other groups. I think it stands a better chance of actually getting through this year if we don't load it up with everybody who, quote, should be on there, but we take a very practical approach to it.
Good point.
Thank you.
Representative Benfield.
I just had a study committee approved yesterday on midwifery, and what I was told by the speaker is that he is only giving per diem to the House members on these study committees, because my resolution did designate one midwife, one OBGYN. We had a couple of designations, and the speaker told me that only House members were going to be given per diem, so I don't think it matters if we add these 2 additional slots.
Hardly seems fair.
That's correct.
That's what we did on
I'll be glad to accept these people on, but I promise you we will work with the courts. We just want a better system than we have now, and we want to find out how much money are in these funds and what's overfunded. But whatever you decide, I'm at your pleasure.
Well, we have an amendment out there. I don't know that it's been moved yet. Any further discussion? The chair is going to take the position, if there's no objection, that the Mumford Amendment is the most inclusive at this time, which includes the Benfield Amendment. Is there a second to the Mumford? Okay, we have a motion that the Mumford Amendment be approved. Is there objection? Hearing none, that amendment would be adopted. Is there further questions or of the author?
I don't have a question, author. I have one other question.
Okay, Vice Chairman Mumford.
Mr. Keller, I see you back there. Do y'all have any interest in being a member of this, or would you be just show up?
We'll just come.
All right.
I have a question, and I would invite the committee's attention on page 2, line 8, and I don't mean to, I thought we could get this one in and out in a hurry, Representative Houston.
Okay.
Line 8, the members of the committee, and in light of the information that's been given us by Representative Benfield, I'm wondering if we need to amend members to say legislative members.
What line?
Line 8.
On page 2.
Oh, on page 2. I've got the wrong page. Yeah. I see what you're talking about. Uh-huh.
That was a separate amendment.
That's fine with me.
Okay. All right. Does anyone offer that amendment?
I move that we amend the bill at line 8, page 2 to read by inserting the word legislative after the first above, member, so the line reads legislative member of this committee.
Is there objection to that amendment? Is there objection? Hearing none, that amendment is adopted. Further discussion or questions? Hearing none, the chair calls the question. All in favor of giving a due pass recommendation to House Resolution 1794, please indicate by raising your right hand. Any objection? It has been adopted by a vote of 11-0.
Thank you, Mr.
you for
Chairman.
being with us.
Thank you.
Have a pleasant weekend.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Mills on Senate Bill 429. Senator Chance, while you're taking up position, you're going to be with him, right? Representative Cox. Would you like for us to give you a 5 or 10 minute heads up by sending Representative Cox up to fetch you while y'all are continuing to work.
I appreciate that very much.
I have a couple of bills up there. I'd hate for you to miss voting on it.
Trying to help them work through those.
I know. I appreciate that. And we will come get you. That was the only Senate member, I think, that was here. Okay. Chairman Mills.
Thank you,
Glad
Mr.
to have
Chairman.
you with us today.
Oh, it's great to be here. I can't think of anywhere else I'd rather be on Friday afternoon.
Right before
5
your
o'clock.
daughter's soccer game, if I may disclose it.
That's right. Thank you, members of the committee. Senate Bill 429 is a very similar bill that I presented to the committee earlier in the session. It has been coined sort of as the ultrasound bill, and basically the synopsis of the bill is that it requires all facilities that perform abortions to offer a sonogram, perform a sonogram, or an ultrasound, both of which are the same, on the patient prior to an abortion being performed. The viewing of the sonogram must be offered to the patient. The patient has the right to decline the viewing, and in the Senate bill, there is an exception to those that it would be offered to, and that is on page 2, on line 3. It specifically states there that where pregnancy is the result of a rape or an incest, then they would not have to perform an ultrasound, and so that we don't forget the basic part of this bill, I'd just like to remind the committee members that that this gives the patient an opportunity to view all the facts of what's about to happen. And why would we want to limit information that is readily available for a patient to view? Michigan governor just recently signed into law a similar bill dealing with ultrasound and this same very measure, and I would just encourage the members of the committee. This has passed through the Senate. I think there's some language in here that includes some of the concerns that we had before when this was discussed, and I think I just have to keep coming back to is why would we not want to present all the facts when we have the technology available? And even those who, whether they're pro-life or pro-choice in their philosophy, I think most people find a common ground in saying that we want to see abortions reduced. I think most folks usually come to that conclusion. And the ultrasound bill is a measure that would reduce, I think, when you give all the facts. It would give them an opportunity to weigh all the facts before making a very important decision. And I hope the committee will look favorably upon Senate Bill 429 as amended.
This was a bill that, or a similar bill, and I can't remember the number.
I think it was House Bill 888. I actually introduced it last session, and then this was introduced, patterned after mine in the Senate this session.
Okay. And this committee spent an extended amount of time discussing your bill back some 3 weeks ago or so, and that bill didn't come out of rules. Refresh my memory.
That's correct. It is in rules now.
Right. But we did pass out a version of 888.
At this, Mr. Chairman, if I may,
right.
At about that same time, the Senate had passed it out of their chamber, and so rules thought rather than have two discussions on the same topic that this would be the best route to go at that point.
Questions of the author from members of the committee? Chairman Franklin? Okay. Now is not the proper time. Other questions of the author? Representative Mangum?
I'll defer to
Representative Abdul Salam.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Mills, I'm not recalling, I guess, the differences between your bill and this bill. Is there any significant difference in it that you can share with us?
Sure, I'd be glad to. The significant difference is, and it was a major part of our discussion when we discussed House Bill 888, on page 2, lines 3 through 5 is really the only difference, and that simply says that when the pregnancy is a result of a rape or incest, then an ultrasound would not have to be performed, and that was added by the Senate. And then I think in the Judiciary Subcommittee, it was added that that would need to be documented with a police report.
Mr. Chairman, which document are we working from?
In my folder were 2. The Senate bill, and you help me out here, Mr.
LC 2923 83S.
And then we had also LC 331370S SCS, which I'm assuming is Senate Committee Substitute.
So
Is
which
that
one are
correct?
we working from?
The blue sheet. Is that as it was passed by the Senate? Okay.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. I'm working off of what was passed out of the Non-Civil Judiciary Subcommittee as amended to the Senate bill.
Okay. This was LC 292383S is what came out of this committee's subcommittee on 429.
That's correct.
All right. Now we're together. Did you?
So which one are we working from?
LC
Okay.
292383S.
Okay. Because he keeps referring to 2 through 5, and I'm not seeing that on here. The numbers were different. I realized it was different documents. But I wanted to also ask, when I was asking about the differences, is this already required in law for all pregnant women, or is it just in the case of a woman seeking abortion?
It is not required, as far as I know right now in law. However, I am aware of no one who does prenatal care that does not provide a sonogram or an ultrasound prior to the Woman Right to Know law that this body passed last year. Actually requires a doctor to give the probable gestational age of a child when a doctor is talking to a patient about an abortion. An ultrasound provides more than just the probable gestational age. It gives an image of what that probable gestational age is that he can support with his comments.
And this test or ultrasound or sonogram is, I take it, in no way harmful to the baby, to the fetus?
No, ma'am. As a matter of fact, the reverse is true. It's used for the health of the mother. It's also used for the health of the child. Sometimes things can be caught early on, and in a preventative measure, steps be taken. The ultrasound is a great aid to both the mother and the child and the doctor. Birthing process.
So we're going to require it for instances of abortion, but not require it for all births?
Well, it's a standard of practice right now for all births. Abortion clinics are in the business of performing abortion, so it would be to their advantage to withhold some of the facts. And what an ultrasound does, it doesn't necessarily mix the facts or mix the words. It says, here's a picture of what's going on inside of you. You determine what's best for you at this point in your life, but we will not withhold any of the facts from you. And then they see a picture. If they so choose, they could say, no, I would rather not choose to look at that. I've made the decision, and I want to move forward with what's best for me.
Thank you.
Question? Go ahead, Representative Bordeaux.
Thank you, Mr. Mumford. To the gentleman, I'm sorry to be replowing any ground here, but this seems to be the same bill that we've already gone through once and was held up by the Rules Committee. Let me ask you then the same question I've asked you before. What happens where a woman is brought to a hospital in critical condition because of an accident and injury, and in order to save her life, the physician has to perform an abortion on her. The procedure to save her life necessarily involves something that will abort this pregnant woman's baby. Is he required to first perform a sonogram on her or risk committing a crime under your bill, under this bill?
Under Senate bill, under this bill that we're looking at, I think if he had time to do it, he would want to do that.
Well, does it make an exception for where he doesn't have time?
It does not make an exception where he doesn't have time. However, I would say to you that, those type procedures, when somebody is critically ill, they don't normally take them to an abortion clinic. They take them to the emergency room or the hospital.
Does this only apply to abortion clinics?
In facilities where abortions are performed.
Could that be a hospital?
It could be a hospital.
Is an emergency room part of a hospital?
It is.
So it would apply to emergency rooms where a woman has been brought for a trauma, who's pregnant, who has to undergo emergency surgery, where the physician has to perform some type of surgery. I don't think this is a weird hypothetical question. It happens, I suspect, most every day, where the life-saving procedure that he has to perform unfortunately aborts the baby. And you're telling me this bill doesn't provide an exception for that? He's guilty of a misdemeanor?
I think you could probably write an exception clause in there that would correct what you're concerned about.
Well, does that concern you?
I would want to see that fixed.
Well, isn't this the same problem that the bill had, what was it, 2-3 weeks ago? And didn't you know this?
With all due respect, Representative Bordeaux, you started out your preface by saying the Rules Committee held this. That was not truthful.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to misstate. Just tell me. I mean, you've had 3 weeks to fix this.
I was asked about an hour and a half ago would I present this bill before the committee today, due to the fact that the Senate is still meeting. And if you want to beat up on Representative James Mills, go ahead. But I'm trying to do the best I can do at this point, and I do take issue with your comments.
I don't mean to beat up on you. I think you're severely handicapped if you've only had an hour and a half to present this. But it's a problem that existed from the time the bill was drafted. You knew about this problem 3 weeks ago, and you've known about this problem at least for the last hour and a half with regard to Senate Bill 429. What's the solution?
Well, we're sitting around a table of attorneys here. I bet we could put our minds together.
I have some language, if it'll help the case.
Chairman Knox asked me to recognize first, and I will recognize you.
Well, before we go off trying to revisit this again, I think that it says on line 24 of page 1, and I think we're in a little bit of a gray area about this, because we can propose any kind of set of facts that we want to that may not be addressed precisely by any legislation, whether it's on the books or proposed. There's always some set of facts that it will not take into account. Nonetheless, on page 1, line 24, it says it shall be illegal to fail intentionally or to refuse to offer, and so on. And I think that's there because in order for it to be criminal, there has to be the intent to fail to do this, and that would not be a present in the case of an emergency where a physician doesn't have time to do it. His intent there is not a criminal intent. His intent there is to assist the person who's in distress, and he's required by his oath and by law to do what he needs to do to save that person.
Representative Knox, I think you make an excellent point, and I also think if you read on the end of line 24 and 25, it says that this person is desiring to have an abortion. They've come in for that express purpose.
Representative Mangum.
We're talking about a criminal matter.
I'm sorry, man, I can't hear you. He's next.
Neither shall an ultrasound or sonogram be required when an abortion is medically necessary as a result of a medical emergency. If the author would add that at line 5 on page 2, because I can understand if a woman comes in, she is unconscious, and the only way to save her life, she can't even look at it, and I can think of some problems. So with the author, think back a couple of years ago, you may have even had that type of language. Neither shall an ultrasound be or sonogram be required when an abortion is medically necessary as a result of a medical emergency. I don't know whether we rejected that in House Bill 888, but that's the same language you had in House Bill 888.
Representative Mangum, I thank you for the attempt. However, upon reflect of Representative Knox's comments, I really think it says on page 1, line 24, it shall be illegal to fail intentionally or to refuse to offer. I think a doctor has every grounds to say, he did not intentionally refuse. He was in the process of saving this person's life. I think any judge would take that in good standing.
Further inquiry. Are you saying that I don't understand what you just said? Okay.
Okay.
And I'm not trying to hurt your bill. I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
Sure.
Simply. So you really, if I'm hurting your bill, I don't want to add that language. So you're basically saying the language I just provided would hurt the bill?
Well, what I'm trying to communicate is I think that the language you're offering is included or would be included in the interpretation of the words on line 24 on page 1, where it says that it shall be illegal to fail intentionally or to refuse to offer this ultrasound. And I think if someone is in the process of saving someone's life, I think any judge with any common sense whatsoever is not going to say this person was in violation of the law. He was trying to save her life. He did not intentionally refuse her.
Do you realize you had that language in your bill, in House Bill 888 before?
Which language?
You had this language and the language about the emergency. If it hurts your bill, I'll leave it alone. But you had both languages. When the Legislative Council drafted 888, it had both the same language. It shall be illegal to fail intentionally or to refuse to offer a pregnant female. It had that language, and in addition to that language, it had the emergency language. So I won't offer the amendment if you don't want it to be offered, but you did have both of those in your previous bill. I'll show you the computer if you don't recall.
No, I don't question the man's statement whatsoever. If you say it's there, I'm sure it was there. However, I do think that is covered, as Representative Knox pointed out earlier, and I'm sorry that I didn't see that earlier. But if this committee chooses to pass the bill out, and upon further study, that would make the bill a safer bill, I certainly would look at that amendment.
I'm just simply, if a woman comes into the hospital and she is unconscious, for example,
she's not desiring an abortion.
Well, she won't be desiring an abortion then, will she? Because she has to be able to give her intention.
She won't be desiring an abortion. Neither would the doctor be intentionally denying her that, because she would already be unconscious.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Bearden.
Representative Mills, your House bill number is 888, correct? That we passed out. How long ago did we pass that?
I don't remember, Representative Bearden.
I remember it was a late night.
I do too.
I think that was about a year ago, wasn't it?
What happened when
The rules, this was discussed among the rules leadership whether or not to move this bill forward. However, at that time, the Senate began to move Senate Bill 429 forward, and they then, it looked like they were going to pass it on out of the Senate. So we saw ourselves in a posture to where we were going to be discussing the same bill maybe 3 times if we moved forward with a bill and they moved forward with a bill. And the decision was made that we would just let the Senate proceed forward and we would deal with their bill, which we're now doing.
Well, I think he answered that. Chairman Franklin.
My point has been made about the woman that's unconscious and she's not desiring an abortion. I don't think she desiring an abortion.
Further questions for the author? Chairman Bordeaux.
I have a quick question. Do you mean for the bill to apply in situations where, due to the development of the baby will not survive the very short time he's born, where he has some horrendous birth defect that will kill him, or in which the baby has already died in utero? Will you still require this woman to undergo a sonogram and the physician to offer the picture to her? Is that your intent?
My intent is that the lady have all the facts that are available at hand before she makes such a critical decision. If she chooses not to view the sonogram, then under this language in this bill she has that right. And that would simply be her right to just say, I understand, doctor, what you're telling me, that this is a child that is deformed or something that I might not want to look at. And under this language, she could not look at it.
Under this bill, does she have a right to refuse to have a sonogram?
Under this bill, the doctor is required to give the patient all the facts.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand your answer. Under this bill, does she have a right to refuse to have a sonogram?
Under this bill, the doctor is required to give the patient all the facts.
Does that mean she has a right to refuse to have a sonogram?
Well, she does have a right, as I said earlier, to refuse to view the sonogram. She does not have a right to not have a sonogram.
Thank you.
Representative Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wanted to direct your question to Chairman Bordeaux. I mean, just thinking through the example you shared of a child that was deformed, or there was some question about whether the child would be born, was dead in utero. Just how is that established without an ultrasound being taken?
Representative Setzler, the chair takes the view that it's not proper for one committee member to question another.
Okay.
I don't mind over time, certainly for any committee member to express their views on a particular issue, and we can debate it by doing it in that fashion. But Chairman Bordeaux, and I don't defend him too often, as you know, but he's not the witness here. So if you want to direct a question to the author,
I'll do that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
To the sponsor of the bill, I'm just trying to think through some of the questions that have been asked here recently in committee. I don't know that there's any other way to really establish the facts of the medical, physical status of a child in utero without performing an ultrasound and using the technology that's available to us to establish that. Can you think of any way that a medical doctor in a standard scope of within the ordinary standard of care would establish the medical status of a child in utero other than by doing an ultrasound?
I'm not a physician and I don't have a medical background, but I have been with my wife through 5 different pregnancies, and each one of those pregnancies, sonograms and ultrasounds were performed, and of course they're even becoming more. The technology is more advanced than when I had it made available to me. But I would think it would only give a person more facts to make a better informed decision to see if there was, when a doctor says, I think there may be a deformity. We now have technology that can not only let a doctor think, he can actually visualize some of these. And I think that's what a sonogram does. It puts a picture.
Isn't it true that if a physician was contemplating terminating a pregnancy through an abortion, particularly a midterm or later term abortion, based on the fact there was an expectation the child was deformed or was might be dead in utero, that the doctor would absolutely want to make sure that they understood the status, because if the mother's intention would have been to carry it to full term if it were living and healthy, but there was an assumption that or thought it might not be healthy, then they'd want to make absolutely sure the status by an ultrasound. So it's my view, and I would just share this with you as the author, that it's absolutely vital in the circumstances that were discussed before that an ultrasound be taken to ensure that all the facts were there. And if there were questions, that would simply be a greater reason to perform an ultrasound, not a reason to not perform one.
Representative Spencer, I think you make an excellent point, and the point that I think you're making is that sonogram is helpful for a healthy child. But in the case where a doctor thinks the child, there may be something wrong, then it's even more helpful, because a parent has more facts at hand before they make such a very important decision.
Chairman Cooper. To do what? Okay. All right. Further questions of the author? Yeah, I'm sorry. Representative Abdul Salam.
Representative Mills, who would pay for these ultrasounds?
The patient would pay for the ultrasound.
And if the patient didn't have the money?
Probably the same people who pay when they don't have the money to give birth to the child. It could be any number of scenarios. I mean, it may be the facility itself, it may be a donation, it may be a program that they're in. But I think when we're talking about, the life of a child here, I've seen us make several decisions this session that, the cost financially versus the cost of a life, who can weigh the two?
Oh, you can't. I'm just asking who's,
right. It's a good question.
Who's to pay for it?
Right. The patient would have to.
So if you're not able to afford it, you still have to have it done.
That's correct.
So you got to find somewhere to get it done that may be cheaper, less safe.
Well, no, ma'am. I think that what the bill requires is that either the facility will have to provide the ultrasound, or they can refer to a medical facility that does have sonograms or ultrasound machines where it could be done.
That's free?
Well, I don't know if they would offer it free or not. That would be up to the clinic or the medical facility.
Okay.
But I know that, when we were going through the birthing process with each of my children, and I would say to you, it's unheard of. I don't know of it. It may exist. Mm-hmm. People want a sonogram. They want to see so they can have all the facts. Many parents want to see whether it's a boy or a girl. Many do not. But they can still even show the sonogram in such a way that it doesn't reveal the the sex of the child.
Yeah, understand. I'm not opposed to sonograms.
Right.
I just know of many opportunities where you have to choose, and if that's one more thing that you can't afford, what do you do? And I personally would think that sonograms, if they're not required for all pregnancies, they should be maybe. I mean, we're talking about people that have chosen to get an abortion, which means that they're not planning to keep the baby, which means that they're probably not real concerned about the health or the shape of the baby because they've decided to abort. So at that point, you know, I would hope that every pregnant woman could get a sonogram, but I know that everyone can't because they can't afford it. So, I mean, but again, if they've decided to abort this baby, then a sonogram is not going to help that child.
Well, I think part of the essence of this bill is we want to make certain that the patient is getting all the facts.
And what facts would the sonogram give?
And the facts will give a picture, as opposed to any number of terms can be used to describe a child, a fetus, any number of terms could be used, and I think that an ultrasound is something that everybody can relate to. A picture is.
Oh, okay, so that would not reveal maybe the health condition. It would just reveal that it's a living, child inside. It would be a picture. When you said facts, I thought you meant the facts about the condition, the facts about the form. I thought you meant facts that about the child itself.
It does. It doesn't reveal all the facts, but for example, if a child had an enlarged head, that would be clearly visible in an ultrasound. If a child was deformed and didn't have an arm or a limb.
But if they're not keeping the baby, what difference would that make?
Well, and that's part of what we think ought to be in the decision process. When I was in the 6th grade, I broke my left arm, and the doctor x-rayed it. He showed me the x-rays. He said, here's the condition. He had the technology to do that. There was never a discussion about how much it was going to cost. Could I afford to pay for the x-ray?
But you hadn't decided to cut your arm off.
Oh, that's correct.
So I'm saying...
That's right. It was even a less crucial decision.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
When we're dealing with a life decision, I think that the facts become even more important.
But it wouldn't be even more important if it was somebody trying to keep the baby.
Yes, and that's why I am not aware of any medical facility that provides prenatal care in the United States of America that does not provide ultrasounds or sonograms.
If you can afford it.
No, even if you can't afford it, I'm not aware of any medical facility that doesn't do that.
Thank you.
Representative Setzler, to be followed by Representative Bearden.
Mr. Chairman, I'm prepared to waive my time. I know there's some concerns today about child care constraints.
We have all kinds of concerns.
So if there's an issue with respect to
Okay.
it would be helpful for me.
Well, the chair's view is as I've tried to do all session, is accommodate members of the committee to the fullest extent. And I'm going to continue that policy, but I would also ask or suggest to the committee they be respectful of all these concerns, and then I'll address those that have signed up to speak in a moment. Representative Bearden. Representative Bearden.
Representative Mills, last year, did this body not pass the Women's Right to Know Act?
Yes, sir, we did.
What all did that entail? Do you recall? Because I know you're up to date on this, probably more so than I am. What all did that entail?
I don't recall everything that was in the Woman's Right to Know Act.
There's a 24-hour waiting period, correct?
That's correct.
Also, counseling involved in there?
I think there is a Department of Human Resources produced a booklet that had to be made available to folks.
Is there, you said you don't recall, and I can't recall either about counseling, but there's at least a 24-hour wait period where she'll be given a chance to get a good bit of information that will probably show how far along she is to pregnancy, how far the baby's grown in that time, and everything else. Correct?
I think the gentleman's correct.
Thank you.
Chairman Cooper has left the room. Representative Benefield, is she gone for a bit? Or do we know? Members of the committee. Chairman Franklin. All right, well, we have members of the public that are here. So I'm not going to recognize you. Chairman Cooper, do you have a question? No, I didn't have a question. Okay. We have 8 people that have signed up to speak, and it appears as we have some who spoke to this committee before on this bill. I don't wish to limit the members of the committee, but I will tell those that have signed up, and I'm not doing this to chill discussion, that this committee has worked hard this week, and both in the committee and on the floor, and I have no assurance I can keep a quorum here when we reach a certain point. So having said that, those of you who want to come talk can come talk. Shelley Centerford. And I would also ask, I know some of you signed up that spoke before, and I would ask you to not go over what was said before, please, because this bill or similar legislation has been in full committee, well, subcommittee under 888. Help me out, Chairman Mills. Full committee on 888 and subcommittee and Chairman Knox's subcommittee. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Shelley Centerford. I'm here on behalf of the Georgia Network to End Sexual Assault, and I'm going to limit my testimony to just one issue that I actually didn't get to speak to the last time I was here on House Bill 888, and that is the amendment that occurred subsequent to my testimony, which was on the rape and incest exemption, what's already been referred to on page 2, on line... well, I'm sorry, I don't have this committee sub that y'all are working off of, but on the second page that requires a police report in order for the rape and incest exemption to apply, we are very much opposed to requiring a police report. As y'all may know, rape is one of the most underreported crimes out there. Estimates range that you should multiply anywhere from 2 to 10 times the number of rapes reported to law enforcement to get an accurate picture of the prevalence of rape. And so if you require a report to law enforcement, this exemption is meaningless for the vast majority of victims. So if your intent here is to provide a different public policy with respect to women who become pregnant from rape or incest, then we would urge the committee to strike that language that was added in the subcommittee to require a report to law enforcement. And if I could also just remind members of Chairman Knox's subcommittee who were here the other night, Dr. Sarah Cook, who's the president of the board of Ganessa, was here. She's a survivor of sexual assault, and she shared with the committee her experience of being assaulted, of being beaten, and going through the criminal justice process and then recovering afterwards. She had hoped to be here today, but she couldn't be here. But she wanted me to share with the committee how horrific it would have been for her, even to have been offered by her physician the opportunity to view the product of her violent attack, and she urges you to take that language out.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Janice, is it Olesnik? Did I pronounce that correctly? Olenek.
Close enough.
I'm sorry, it looked like an S.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me speak, and I'm going to be real mindful of your time and the time of day and what you've all been through. I work at a pregnancy center out in Rockdale County. I see women day in and day out that both want abortions and that don't want abortions. And I want to address the question on the cost of the ultrasound. We do them for free. And there are pregnancy centers all across the state that do them for free and would be happy to do them for the court system or anybody else that wanted. There is no cost involved in that. A girl can go anywhere. There is also centers up in North Georgia that have mobile ultrasound units that will go around to the different counties to do the ultrasound. So I don't think cost should be involved. We have had women that have come to us from the battered women's shelter, from the abuse shelter. One woman in specific that came to us because she'd been beaten, she'd been kicked in the stomach, pushed down the stairs. She wanted away from the relationship. life. She wanted away from the situation. She was sure the baby was dead. She figured she was about 15 weeks. She wanted an abortion, no doubt about it, because she wanted to put this all behind her and start out again with her life and start fresh. She came to us. We did the ultrasound on her. She saw a baby that was not only kicking and waving at her, but very healthy and very happy, and she changed her mind on that abortion. And she came back to us after that baby was born to thank us for giving her the opportunity to make that choice. And I think requiring an abortion clinic to do an abortion or an ultrasound on a girl considering an abortion is not just a benefit to the girl, it's a benefit to the clinic. Medically, they've got proof if that baby is, if the girl, because we have heard many cases where girls have come back and said, you know, that I had a pregnancy in the tubes and you did an abortion on me and I'm going to sue you. Well, they would have proof right there that that pregnancy was not in the tubes. We've had girls come to us that wanted an abortion. A couple coming to us wanted an abortion because they couldn't afford another child. They were married, had 2 children, he was out of work, and they could not afford to have another child at this time in their life. When we did the ultrasound on it, we saw not 1 baby or 2 babies, but there were 3 babies in there. And they made the choice at that moment that they were not going to abort. And the father even came to us and said, we want to thank you for that, because, you know, considering to abort 1 child was a terrible decision for us to make as a family. It's a tough decision for anybody to make. He said, but when we found out that there was more than 1 baby, we knew right then and there that we could not make that decision. And without an ultrasound, they never would have known that. So I thank you. I thank you for your time.
Thank
and
you very much.
I respectfully ask you to consider this bill very strongly. Thank you
very much. Julie.
I'd like to thank that person for a great district out in Rockville.
We know what part of Rockmart now, or Rockdale, don't we? Julie Thomas.
I'm going to be brief also. In 1978, I had an abortion here in Atlanta. I was 18 years old and I was alone. I chose to abort my child as I believed at the time that it was a blob of tissue. When it came time for me to receive an ultrasound, I wasn't familiar with that procedure, and so I asked the sonographer if I could look and see what she was doing, and she informed me that I could not. I asked her what she was doing, and she never did really tell me the truth. I had no idea she was looking at the inside of my body. I had no idea she was looking at my baby. I went through with the abortion, still not knowing what she had seen inside of me. The cost of my ultrasound was included in the overall package for my abortion. I can assure you today that had I been able to see my ultrasound, I would have known that I was looking at my baby. I could have seen the beating heartbeat and I would have changed my mind. I would have gone home, told my parents, and carried my baby to term. In our medical pregnancy center, we perform ultrasounds for free. I see women and men change their mind on a regular basis because they actually realize that they're already a mother. I saw a 3-year-old little girl in with her mom, and the screen was over the mom's head, and they were all looking at the baby, and the little girl points up and says, "Look, Mom, it's a baby." Even a 3-year-old understood what she was looking at. Why was I not allowed to see my ultrasound? I believe I was not allowed to see it because the abortion facility wanted me to have an abortion. They did not want me to have a choice, as I would have chosen life. They wanted me to think that abortion was the only choice that I had. I wish that I had been given all of the information so that I could have made an informed decision based on the facts. I wished I would have known. When I bought a house several years ago by myself, I didn't know much about construction. I had to ask for help. I hired an inspector. I brought friends over. I brought my parents over. I brought everybody over to look at the house so that I could make a very informed decision before I spent all this money and made this important decision in my life. I would never have chosen to do it had I not had those people give me their opinion on the situation, and yet I chose to have an abortion without receiving all the facts. I do believe in Representative Mills' question of why not. I don't think that we as women are informed enough about our bodies to make that important of a decision without all the facts. And I thank you for your consideration and your consideration of SB 429. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mary Boyer.
Thank you, Chairman Ralston, for the opportunity to speak. I am here. I am the pro-life director for the Archdiocese of Atlanta, and we do support the bill, and for a variety of reasons that have already been presented before. The only additional point I'd like to bring out here, because it was discussed about the availability of the ultrasounds and the cost and so forth, and from the statistics that are available from the state of Georgia, 45% of the abortions that are done in the state of Georgia are performed at 5 abortion clinics in the Atlanta area. And those 5 abortion clinics put it out clearly on their website that an ultrasound is part of the procedure. So I can only deduce that it appears to be standard practice in those clinics, and that's a large percentage. It's not half, but those are the only ones that actually had it on their website. So I would assume it's probably standard practice in most of the other clinics as well. I can't guarantee that, but at least those particular clinics. So it does appear that the availability of the ultrasound is not a problem, and it's already included in the cost. And that's all I'd like to add, and hope you vote for the bill.
Thank you very much. We have a private practice OBGYN. And I cannot, now I know why I can't read your writing. Because you're a doc.
Thank you,
Please
Mr.
identify
Chairman.
yourself.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Dr. Kathleen Raviel, like ravioli, but Raviel. But I'm in private practice as an OBGYN in Atlanta for 21 years, and I would urge you to look on this bill favorably. As has been mentioned, every woman in the United States has an ultrasound during pregnancy. This is uniformly done. Most women have several ultrasounds during pregnancy. The crisis pregnancy centers perform ultrasounds for free, and there's also other benefits for the woman having an ultrasound. 2% of pregnancies in the United States are ectopic, so if a woman went in and had an abortion and thought she had ended the pregnancy, she wouldn't recognize the symptoms of an ectopic pregnancy later on. 15% of pregnancies are going to miscarry anyway, so if the woman had an ultrasound, they could assure her already that there wasn't a baby there. There was just placental tissue and she was going to miscarry. But also it changes the heart of women. And I also happened to have a patient this week who called me up that one of her coworkers who was married and having marital problems had found she was pregnant and wanted to have an abortion. And the woman urged her to come to a crisis pregnancy center with her. Her husband met her there, and she had an ultrasound, and lo and behold, she was expecting twins. And you would think if you're going to have difficulty having one baby, why would you accept 2? But the husband and the wife both said, we'll continue with the pregnancy. And I can also say, as an OBGYN who supported abortion during my residency, that when I took an ultrasound rotation, it changed my heart. So I would urge you to look favorably upon this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Suzanne Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I spoke briefly 2 weeks ago to some of these issues, and I would concur with some of the statements that have briefly been made that ultrasound is pretty much routinely being done before abortion procedures. They need this medical information before they can proceed. A lot of my work recently has been with Sonography Now and the Option Ultrasound program with focus on the family. There are multiple pregnancy centers springing up all around the country, getting ready and trained to do ultrasound procedures, limited ultrasound procedures that would provide this information if for some reason this abortion clinic did not have it available. So it is out there, it is free, and it is being more and more widely used.
Okay, thank you very much. Carol Swift.
Thank you, Chairman. I am Carol Swift, President of Georgia Right to Life, and I want to encourage your support for this bill. And women in Georgia deserve all the information before they make life-changing decisions. I want to reiterate that 75% of all the abortions in Georgia are for residents in DeKalb and Fulton. And I'd like to submit to you a map that shows exactly where the abortion clinics are already in the state and the pregnancy centers throughout the state that offer free ultrasounds. So if I could submit that to you. Accessibility is readily available. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Any questions of Ms. Swift?
I'm sorry, I'm trying to cancel my reservation with Delta. They don't understand what the
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Mangum?
I'm just interested in knowing, do you have a basis to believe why are all the abortions performed in those two counties? I mean, oh, you mean the residents?
Is that a question for me?
Yes, ma'am.
It's where the abortion facilities are, and it's where the heaviest population is, but it's also where the facility, most of the facilities are.
So if there's no facility, people are not doing abortions?
No, they're traveling.
They're traveling.
Sarah Cook.
She wasn't able to come.
Oh, okay. Somebody had written her name down. Okay. That's all those that have signed up. What's the pleasure of the committee? I can't remember who has to be recognized first. Do y'all remember? Chairman Franklin, I'll start with you.
Second.
All right, we have a motion that Senate Bill 429 be given a due pass recommendation by committee sub, and you're referring to 2383S, the way it came from the subcommittee. Okay. Is there discussion on the motion? Chairman Cooper.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this, Mr. Chairman. I don't make that motion lightly. I've had a lot of time to think about this since it's within our committee. I helped save the femicide bill last week. I cast down a bill report bill out of my committee. I have listened to people in my district getting calls. I served on a 30-member Violence Against Women Commission with people from all over the country, and somehow or other they found out about this bill. And I've had calls from my committee members about the rape and incest. So I just at this point in good conscience cannot, and with all due respect to Chairman Mills, who is such a sincere person and brings us in such a good heart, in the form it's in, I don't feel like I'm being people about, so I'd like to move the table.
Chairman Cooper has moved to table. All right, now we have a motion to table. Was that a substitute motion? We have a substitute motion to table Senate Bill 429. Is there discussion first on the substitute motion? And I recognize Representative Bearden.
Oh, no, I was going to second it, and due to the fact I think there's work needs to be done, I think several committee members are comfortable with this, especially when it's talking about mothers, for the mother, or lack of the mother, to care for these, some other issues. So those grounds right there, I would take a second now, she got it, so I was just going to get a comment on it.
Further discussion on the substitute motion? Representative Setzler.
If I could, and again, members of the committee, I'm sensitive to the fact there's a variety of opinions on this bill. I personally believe we as a General Assembly have an obligation to look out for all Georgians. I believe that children in utero we're talking about here are members of our human community, and I think this is the kind of thing that's important enough not to put off. If there needs to be perfecting in the bill to address some conditions that that Chairman Cooper referred to that she has some concerns about, or some concerns that Representative Bearden has with the bill. I think this committee has shown its willingness to address those. I think, having been through those already this session, I think we are pretty far along the path of being able to do that. But I think if we sort of stand back and look at this from a 10,000-foot level, if we address the concerns of some members of the committee, there are still significant lives that are going to be saved by acting on this bill now as opposed to next legislative session. There are going to be, again, we've heard the testimony today, there's going to be a significant number of people who, men and women alike, married couples, single moms, all kinds, who are going to be influenced by the impact this bill has for ordinary pregnancies, ordinary women in tough situations. And I think to that point, I think, we as a committee have shown a willingness to get things right and pass it out the right way. I would encourage us to do that today as well. If there's some concerns, let's address those. But we need to pass this bill because there are lives at stake in what we do as a committee. And this is not just in my view, one of the bills that can get caught up in the politics or that can get set aside, but there's lives at stake and are not acting. Mr. Chairman.
Further, Representative Benfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll be brief, but I've been silent through a lot of this debate, and it's been very personal for me because, as many of you know, 2 years ago, I lost a child when I was 29 weeks along, and you know it because it happened during the session. I missed a lot of the session because of it, and my child had severe fetal abnormalities. In fact, Dr. Krotkin was my doctor. It just was a coincidence that he's the one who distributed this letter. He is one of the top neonatologists in the state and a man of compassion, and I would just encourage you all to read what he wrote because I couldn't say it better. To require women who went through what I went through to have to look at a sonogram and see a child with severe abnormalities, I do agree it's very cruel. And I know that's not the intent of the author. I think the author is a sincere man, and I'm not saying that he's being cruel, but I would say that the impact would be very heartbreaking on women going through this. And I would just encourage the committee to please support Chairwoman Cooper's motion, and I call the question.
We have some other hands up, and Chair's reluctant to cut off debate, but I will ask if anybody insists on further discussion on the substitute motion, I will honor that. Representative Abdul Salam.
I do not wish to prolong this debate either. It is also a very sensitive and emotional issue from the perspective of being a woman, being a young mother, working with teenage pregnancy, the Adolescent Prevention Council, and also being a rape survivor. And I don't have to keep beating anybody over the head with that story, but it is the truth. Been there, done that. So it is very difficult. The thing that I would just ask again is, why would we do this just for people that have decided to have an abortion, or somebody may have decided for them to have an abortion? Because speaker after speaker came to the table and testified that it's already being done and it's standard practice. So I don't understand why we would legislate something that's not necessary. I mean, 75%, 5 of the major clinics are already doing it. Over and over again, our speakers in our testimony said that it's already being done. So I would call for the tabling and try to work on this and look at this, also from a sensitive perspective, I think.
Representative Mangum.
With great reluctance, I ask the parliamentary inquiry as to
state your inquiry.
Whether or not there is, if it does not pass the tabling, if it's not tabled, is there an opportunity to work out some of these concerns that clearly are existing?
I think if I may interrupt you, I think I understand your question. If the question is, will the chair entertain amendments if this motion fails, the answer is yes. Is that your question?
Yes.
Okay. Representative Setzler.
Again, I would share with the committee. There. I would encourage the committee to consider take the time, take what we do very seriously, and recognize there are members among us, people who are in this room, people in our body, the House of Representatives, people in this building that we walk around and interact with every day, who are, who may not have been planned pregnancies. It's part of our human community, and I just encourage us to consider that having all the facts is profoundly impactful on young women. When we debated the Women's Right to Know bill last year, the issue was empowering women with all the decisions. I know young women who've made mistakes and didn't have all the facts and deeply regret what they've done. This bill provides women the facts. And I don't want to lose the forest for the trees by focusing so much on the borderline cases that we lose the 90% of the cases of women, in my opinion, who deeply need to be presented with the facts. And that's what's at stake here. And I would just urge the members of the committee to consider taking the time, getting this right. Please understand what's at stake. And I commit my time to get this right, and I would just urge the members of the committee to work with us to do that.
Chairman,
like I say, I have wrestled with this question. I thought it was over, but it was still bothering me. Last year we passed the Woman's Right to Know out of my committee. It's when it had been held up for something like 13 years. I will consider that one of my legislative major accomplishments. And over the summer, our DHR spent many hours and over $300,000 developing the Woman's Right to Know book. And the people from the Right to Life and all wanted very specific pictures, and they didn't want just graphic pictures. They wanted actual, pictures of the stage. And this is the book. And I think they are very realistic. I think we made major steps with this. I think we're making major steps with the feticide bill that's moving through. Like I say, it's a decision that still troubles my heart, but I'll stand with my motion to table it.
Further discussion. Hearing Representative Bingham.
Great presentation again. Would the author of this motion table allow some attempt to remedy some of the concerns that exist? And is it the issue that we do not have time? I know it is late. It is on Friday, and it is on Friday.
Representative Mangum, I'm not sure that in some forums that a motion to table is even debatable, but
okay.
Not then the chair, out of an abundance of fairness, I think has allowed, even refusing to recognize a member's motion to call the question, full discussion, and we have had a very, very full discussion. Now, having said that, I'm not trying to cut off debate, but I'm not going to have you, as I didn't allow Representative Setzler ask a question, I'm not going to have you ask a member a question. Further discussion. Hearing none, the chair calls the question. The question before the committee is the motion by Chairman Cooper to table Senate Bill 429. All in favor of the motion to table will indicate by raising their right hand. All opposed. And the chair votes not to table.
Okay.
The motion is defeated by a vote of 6-4 and 7 against.
Mr. Chairman,
Chairman Cooper.
I have some amendments.
Chairman Cooper, you're recognized.
Okay, thank you. And believe it or not, I think I'm probably glad that happened. I have wrestled with this so, and Representative Setzler is a dear friend of mine. Since on line 14, this is LC 29. Do you want them all at one time, or as we go along?
Let's take them as we go along.
Okay. LC 29, 23, 83S, line 14. An ultrasound or sonogram examination of each unborn child shall be offered instead of performed. Offered. I think from hearing what people said, as many of the abortion clinics where they're trying to get at this problem, but it's so broad it covers everywhere, I think the fact that they may be doing some of them, but they're not offering to show them to people. And down below. So I would change that to offer prior to an abortion being formed. So that was on line 14. I would change performed to offered. And that takes care of maybe people where they do have to pay for them, and poor women. I mean, I'll bring up again about, when people put off, and second trimester abortions are much worse than first trimester abortions. It's bad at any time, but they're worse. So that's my first one. You just want to mark them down? Are we voting as we go, Mr. Chairman? How do you want me to do it?
Why don't you go ahead and offer them, and then we'll come back and vote on them one at a time. Sure. Yeah, let's wait till she gets done. She's going to offer them all at one time.
Okay. On line 17, as part of the written informed consent, and we do have it where they have to have an informed consent, and the Woman's Right to Know bill required that they had to be offered a chance to see the booklet or view it, and it has to be recorded. So as part of the written informed consent to the abortion procedure, a pregnant female desiring an abortion shall be offered an opportunity to view the ultrasound or sonogram image of her unborn child, and that means it would be recorded. Next, I would mark out lines 20 through 23. This is going to make that $300,000 plus book and more procedures being done. Okay. The next one would be on line 24, it would start with line 24. It shall be illegal to fail intentionally or to refuse to offer a pregnant female desiring an abortion an opportunity to view the ultrasound or sonogram image of her unborn child prior to performing an abortion unless the fetus has abnormalities incompatible with life or the mother's life is in immediate danger. So that last part after, and it would, so that would be after abortion on page 2, line 1. It would say, unless the fetus has abnormalities incompatible with life or the mother's life is in immediate danger. Then I would strike the rest of line 1. Violation of this code section shall be punished as a misdemeanor. And line 2, I would strike that sentence, or the rest of that. I think it's a sentence. I marked out. I write like the doctor instead of my husband. And I would put the Board of Medicine would be responsible for any disciplinary actions necessary.
That would be a new sentence.
I'll go over it again. Yes, sir. The Board of Medicine would be responsible for any disciplinary actions necessary.
So we're striking violation of this code shall be punished as a
misdemeanor.
So we're eliminating the criminal sanction.
Right, but that they could be sanctioned by the medical board. And being married to a doctor, I can tell you, having your medical license threatened is as important as a misdemeanor. And then, starting on line 4, at the end of rape and incest, I would put a period and mark out either of which is documented by law in a police report. As the head of the Boston Police Department for this area reminded me in the last couple of days, most women are so demoralized and embarrassed by the fact that they've been raped that they don't report it. And if you don't report it at the time, when 6 weeks later you find out that you're pregnant, it's going to be too late. I think also saying that we can't trust women enough. I just don't think we're going to have that many women that are going to be falsifying that they were raped, to use that as an excuse. And then that's the ones I have offered.
So I counted 4 separate amendments that you have offered.
Well, I'm not a lawyer, and I probably need some help, but my good friend Robbie Mumford, even though he can't make me a lawyer for serving on judiciary, gave me a law school pen today, Mr. Chairman. So I must be a junior lawyer. So,
from the finest law school in the world, I might add, too.
That's it. The Judiciary Committee.
Okay. First of all, let me ask the members of the committee. There's Jill. Before we start asking questions, does everyone understand each of the 4 Cooper amendments? Does everyone just understand them? Clear on them? Okay.
There are 5.
Well, I counted the one in subsection B, subparagraph B, on line 14, line 17 in subsection C. Then I counted deleting subsection D as the 3rd one. And then obviously would need to re-letter. And then I counted, maybe I just grouped all of the one in what was E,
right,
or what is E, as 1. Yeah, there are 5. And then the one in F. Okay. All right, Representative Benfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Chairwoman Cooper, for bringing these amendments. I support all of them. And as a graduate of the University of Georgia Law School, I'm happy to have you as a junior graduate.
Thank you.
My question is just to the First Amendment, where you change that the sonogram shall be offered as opposed to performed. And I applaud that proposal. My question is, if there is a facility that does not have a sonogram, I know most facilities do have access to a sonogram, but if there is a facility that does not have a sonogram, does that mean that they would be able to go elsewhere? They could offer the sonogram, and then they could go elsewhere. They wouldn't be required, in essence, to have a sonogram on site.
No, it says on line 15, wouldn't I think it would cover me, Mr. Chairman, if you can just check for the legality. It says such examination may be performed on site or by referral to another facility.
Okay. See if I've been a good lawyer and read the bill. Thank you.
All right. Any further questions on the first Cooper Amendment? On the second Cooper Amendment? Questions? Representative Mangan.
How does that compare with the right to know booklet that was existed now? You spoke of that a little bit.
Well, they have to be informed in what the Medical Association did, and what they sent out to all the OBGYNs across the state was the suggestion in the form that they had to document it. So the best thing, when you go in to have medical care, they give you an informed consent, and they have a place on there where they check and say that they were offered, an opportunity to view the woman's right to know, and that. So it'd just be all the doctors would have to do would be add another category that they were offered an opportunity to have a sonogram and view it if they wanted to.
If there is such a thing in this bill, I think that's a largely technical addition to the bill.
But would that justify your deletion of subparagraph B? Is that what you're trying to do?
What?
Give written proof that it was in fact form.
Right, because that's what they did. I mean, and there's no use in sending out and calling DHR to get another one that has to go out to the doctors, because they're already, if it's on your if you just add it to your informed consent saying you've done the other, it's just more stuff for DHR.
Further questions on that amendment? The third Cooper amendment, which proposes to delete subsection D. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I don't understand the policy issue there. I'd like to have Chairman explain it briefly.
Me? Oh, to delete this? I just think that it's not necessary. I mean, where you really want to know it is where the doctor is doing it, and if they put it on the written form, I mean, doctors already feel like there's just umpteen forms for them to do, and they're already sending in forms, and there are forms required of the abortion clinic doctors already, and that would go on those forms. So
Okay.
it's just double doing. It's along with what goes with what they were required to do with the woman's right to know.
Further questions? Okay, on what is now subsection E on the top of page 2, the language that was added after the word abortion, and then the striking of the misdemeanor language and adding the substitute language. Questions about that proposed amendment? Representative Mangum.
Would you repeat the language unless the fetus has abnormalities incompatible
With life, or the mother's life is in immediate danger? That'd be like from a car wreck. You come into the emergency room, you're in a car wreck or something. Or the mother's blood pressure, and she goes into eclampsia, and it goes sky high, and they're trying to save her life so she doesn't have a stroke and die, something like that. And those things happen very rapidly sometimes, but it would be a major.
Further questions on that amendment? Chairman Franklin.
I'm not certain that we would really need that, since going back to the discussion that we had with Chairman Mills, looking on line 17, the pregnant female desiring an abortion. So if she got the car wreck situation and it's an emergency, I don't think she's showing up at the hospital desiring an abortion. I don't see a point for that.
Mr. Chairman?
Chairman Cooper.
I think it's important that we be very specific about this, and I go back to the fact that while we were writing this woman's right to know bill, people misunderstood the law, and it's at one of the hospitals in northeast Atlanta. They had a mother with the fetus dying. It died during the night, and they made her look. They didn't offer it. They made her look at pictures of where the fetus was when she had the dead baby inside. I think it is much better if we're specific. That was, as far as I'm concerned, cruel and inhumane treatment in the hospital should have been. But they were so afraid about the new bill. They're trying to do what's right with the new bill, and they'd heard we passed it, and they hadn't gotten the woman's right to know, and they hadn't gotten the forms, and they were overzealous.
Further questions? Okay, the final amendment is in what is now subsection F, which strikes the language after the word on line 4, incest, and puts a period there. Yeah. Any questions? Representative Mangum.
I thought I heard something about when we strike violation of the section shall be punished as a misdemeanor, but there was.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. The Board of Medicine, we did. Thank you, Representative Mangum. The board, that goes after the mother's life is in immediate danger, and it said the Board of Medicine would be responsible for any disciplinary actions necessary for non-compliance. I guess would you say for non-compliance? Or, I don't know, Mr. Chairman, how you technically, legally do that.
I'm sorry, I was conferring with the Vice Chair.
I just want to try to tie it back to where their medical
What was
license
the original? Jill, did you have the Chairman Bordeaux, while she's looking, do you have a?
Yes, sir. My only suggestion is to vote. I think the proper name is the Deposit State Board of Medical Examiners.
I didn't know what that was. My husband tries to stay away from them, so anyway, by doing what's right, so, that's...
I try to stay away from
Oh, for the bar exam, yeah. The doctors. Okay.
I think what Chairman Cooper is trying to say is this.
All right, listen up, everybody.
The composite state board of medical examiners shall be responsible for any disciplinary actions related to this subsection.
That is, thank you very much.
Perfect. Okay. What would we do without her? We say that every time. All right. Any Representative Beard? I'm going to go back and ask the committee one by one what their pleasure is. Any further questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Representative Setzler.
Are there any other proposed amendments?
Yeah, the last one about incest and.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I called that one.
No, sir.
And Mr. Chairman, the only other thing I'd like to, when we get to Amendment 4, I'd just like to ask Chairman Cooper, could we address subparts of that separately? I mean, if we were amenable to parts but not all, or do you want us to take it up or down?
No, I think we ought to take it.
Is it the pleasure of the committee to vote those two lines separately? We can do 6 amendments.
Whatever.
Didn't understand.
Oh, was that from the Board of Medicine? You wanted a different one?
Oh, you mean on line number 1, whether or not that's 2 amendments rather than...
Okay.
Well, I was treating it as one amendment since it was in one subsection, but I don't have a problem if it's the committee's pleasure. Chairman Knox?
Would Chairman Cooper entertain the notion of simply offering this as a committee sub with those changes? Let's vote on them all at once.
Yes, I would if that's okay. Be glad to do that.
Okay. Is there any objection to letting the author of the amendments restate that? So now we'll be voting on all of the amendments at one time as a group.
Right.
Are you saying for this one amendment with these 2 changes, or all 4 or 5, however you count it?
Every one we talked about.
So are you making a motion now that we do pass by committee sub?
Yes, sir.
That would incorporate all of your amendments?
Yes, sir.
Representative Mangum?
Sad that I get this question, but Mr. Chairman, can I ask someone how much does sonogram cost? Just want to know the actual cost. Sonogram, what is the actual cost? Yes.
It varies greatly, but I would say in the range of $250 to $400.
Just the same. Testimony last time it said.
No, I don't think she really had much. They had it.
No, we were $50 to $60. No, that's the guy from Emory said.
Well, maybe they're doing a whole bunch of them. It might be an abortion clinic where they all want it. But I don't know about that. I can't believe they would do that.
Sir, if I could clarify that, that's in a high-risk obstetrical setting. We already addressed the issue that abortion providers are largely doing ultrasound. It's incorporated already in the cost.
I understand that, but I wanted to know how much it costs. Mr. Chairman?
Representative Benfield?
I would just say from very recent personal experience, since I just had a baby, that my sonograms cost more than that, and I would ask the chairman, if you could, to ask Pat Cota with the OBGYN Society what her opinion is on the cost. I paid more than that. I paid $500.
Okay. Ms. Swift.
Ms. Centerfit testified in the last hearing that the early stages is $50 to $100.
Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to acknowledge that there is a difference of opinion amongst those here as to the cost of ultrasound. And the chair is going to take the view that the chair, whose youngest child is now 16, doesn't have a clue as to what they cost nowadays, okay? Did you want to be recognized, Representative Setzler?
No, Mr. Chair, again, I don't profess to be an expert. I do recall testimony last time in our committee that there was discussion. I think the committee, in fact, speculated, and we were corrected, that it was, for the early terms, less than $100 I was surprised by that.
Well,
I would have thought.
I mean, I don't think we're going to get any consensus on the price. Chairman Bordeaux.
Chairman, I call the question.
Thank you.
Chairman Cooper's motion to.
And I'm going to grant that request. Is there a second or any objection? We have a motion now that we call the previous question. What we're going to be voting on is a due pass recommendation on Senate Bill 429 by committee sub that would incorporate each of the Cooper amendments. And Jill, do I need to say, well, I guess I do need to say that would automatically then re-letter the subsections were this to be adopted. And you'll fix the title. Thank you. All in favor of giving a due pass recommendation to Senate Bill 429 by committee sub.
Parliamentary, Mr.
Representative Setzler.
I just want to make sure I understand where we stand. If the committee substitute offered by Chairman Cooper were to fail, would this committee have an opportunity to consider the bill as presented by the author?
If it fails, then we're back to where we started. And we'll keep on talking as long as we have a quorum.
Would a substitute? Well,
no. We have a motion to call the previous question. Do you have parliamentary inquiry, Representative Mangum?
Yes, sir. It was somewhat in there, because I do have some concern about the first amendment. But I think you've answered in answering Mr. Setzler's question. We would be back, and we would have to possibly vote on these individually.
We would do whatever the pleasure of this committee is to do. All right. We're going to call the question. All in favor of giving Senate Bill 429 a due pass recommendation by committee sub as stated by Chairman Cooper, which would incorporate all of her amendments, please indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed? The motion has been adopted by a vote of 8-3. Thank you, Chairman Mills.
Thank you, members of the committee.
No, because what happens is you'll get it offered, but you can have them. You don't have them there. You can have them somewhere else. Such you can
Rules Committee meeting
or by referral to another.
The Senate is still busy. We have about 3 more bills as I left before.
Do House committee chairs who are still trying to help the Senate, as well as the people of Georgia tonight, get special treatment in rules and maybe even excused absences and assistance?
I have to present the bill before I can go up there and ask the esteemed chairman of the rules that question.
Come around, Senator Wiles. What are you here on?
Same thing.
Same thing,
Mr. Chairman.
Same thing.
Yeah.
What?
He said the same thing. I thought
No.
All right. What are you? Y'all are here on 316?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Chair calls Senate Bill 316.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I know it's been a long, arduous day, and we appreciate your willingness to hear this bill. Before we begin, Mr. Chairman, I do want to report to you some good news. House Bills 1145, 1282, and 1542 have passed favorably today in the state Senate. And as Senator Wiles mentioned, we are still...
You're going to make my drive to Blue Ridge about midnight tonight much more pleasant.
We are still working, and if the chair will allow, I'm going to ask Representative Cox to assist on this bill, since hopefully he will be carrying it on the House floor, and also Senator Wiles, who has helped us with the committee substitute, which I think you all have. Very, very briefly, this bill, Senate Bill 316, which I authored, actually...
And this came out of which subcommittee, by the way? The Knox subcommittee. Okay.
Came out of Chairman Knox's subcommittee. This Senate bill
has to do with prepaid pornography cards and providing those to minors. Basically, what the bill does is it makes sure that anyone who provides these prepaid pornography cards to minors, that they are subject to the same penalties as those that provide obscene materials to minors. And I'll be happy to answer any questions about the nature of these prepaid pornography cards. Actually, real quickly, let me just go into that. A couple of years ago, a company out of New York began producing prepaid pornography cards, which allows people to access the hardest of hardcore internet websites, which require a age verification, credit card numbers or age verification, and they can use these prepaid pornography cards to get on the internet and access these sites without having to provide their age verification. And obviously what we're trying to do here is to prevent these cards from being provided to minors.
Sure. Okay. I mean, you know.
You just ask your favorable consideration.
Questions from the committee for the author of the bill? Wait just a minute. Your colleague from Cobb, I think, wants to be heard.
Well, no, if you're all ready to move, Mr. Chairman, we'd like to get back on the floor so we can get up the rules.
We want
just
you
like
to
you, I have bills on rules too.
All right, we have we got a quorum too, don't we? We have a motion by Chairman Franklin, seconded by Chairman Knox, that we give Senate Bill 316 by committee sub a do pass recommendation. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your right hand. All opposed? It's given a 5-0 vote.
Thank you, members of the committee.
I will report to the chairman of rules that you're still working down there.
And that I'm going to
passing Senate bill.
That I'm going to come visit with him about Monday's rules calendar.
I'll tell him you're on your way.
Thank you very much. Let's see. You better go fetch him. You going to fetch Hill down? Well, I've only got one person here. If you can either talk one of my committee members into going or go get him yourself, Representative Benton. If I don't have anybody Senator Hill has 408 and 541. Who's doing 394? You are? That's the one he's wanting on. We'll wait on that one, Barry, if you don't mind. My mama raised me better than that, although I'd like to. Senate Bill 522, Representative Bearden, you're handling that one by prior arrangement.
I won't come up front because I want to get Bob Keller to help me out on this. I know when I'm over my head. Chairman, we'll need you to
Okay. I'm up.
No, I don't want to intimidate when they sit in front of this committee. What we're going to be working on is a substitute to Senate Bill 522. It's LC 292418S. Should be in your folders. This is going to make some changes to the juvenile justice law. This act is going to be known as Amy's Law. Amy Yates was an 8-year-old little girl from Carroll County. She was murdered by a 12-year-old, and this is where the name came from. And what this bill does quickly: if a court commits a delinquent child to the Department of Juvenile Justice for a delinquent act which, if done by an adult, would be the crime of murder, then the court's commitment may continue until the child's 21st birthday. This is given flexibility to the judge to detain a child or juvenile that commit the act of murder to age 21. On page 2, line 10, it also states, by making specific written findings of fact using the elements set forth in paragraphs 1 through 5 of Code Section 151163. What that states is, and determine whether restrictive custody is required, the court shall consider the needs and best interests of the child. 2, the record and background of the child. 3, the nature and circumstances of the offense, including whether an injury involved was inflicted by the child or another participant. for the need for protection of the community and the age and physical condition of the victim. So this bill just basically gives a lot more flexibility to the juvenile court judge when a violent act occurs to detain that child in confinement up to the 21st birthday. I'll answer any questions.
Questions of either Representative Bearden or Mr. Keller. Chairman Franklin.
Got a couple. One, what's the highest they can get now in confinement?
For murder?
If the child is under 13, the maximum they can get right now is 2 years.
So under 13 with this, they go to their 21st birthday.
They can go to their 21st birthday.
Is there a reason why we stop it at 21 and don't take it any further?
That would maximize the jurisdiction of the juvenile court.
Is there a way to then transfer it out of juvenile court into superior court?
When they are 13 years of age, murder is one of the crimes that is treated. It's one of what we call the 7 deadlies, and they are treated as an adult at age 13. The dilemma was what to do with anyone under 13, and this was Senator Hamrick's reaction to the best way to handle that. So that's the reason that it is.
Do you have a question? No? I'll come back to you. Isn't it true, to Representative Bearden, that the Department of Juvenile Justice and all the stakeholders in this area have signed off on the bill with the amendment?
That's true.
Okay. Vice Chairman Mumford.
I'll direct this to Mr. Keller. Can you go over for me, just so I'm clear, what the crimes are that are included?
It's only murder. Only murder. Yes. Oh,
it's fine. Okay. Chairman Franklin. You're recognized.
Second.
We have a motion that Senate Bill 522 be given a due pass recommendation by committee sub. Is there any discussion on the motion? Is there any discussion? Hearing none, the chair calls the question. All in favor of giving Senate Bill 522 a due pass recommendation by committee sub, please indicate by raising your right hand.
I'm so proud of the committee.
I'm used to having anybody sit here and vote.
All opposed, same sign. All opposed. And the motion is adopted by a vote of 8-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Keller.
Thank you.
And thank you, Conferee Bearden. We're in a little holding pattern, and I think we shouldn't be long once we get senators down here. I'd excuse Senator Hill. Is Staten coming? Oh, he's not coming. You're doing him. Okay.
Not disagree.
Okay. So the posture we're in is we now have everybody that had an interest in 394 here, do we not? And so we can take that bill up while we wait on Senator Hill. Is that correct? Come around, Representative Loudermill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Senator Staten had a family emergency, and he has had to leave. Nothing that's real critical, but he had to get back home on an urgent matter, so else he would have been here. He did hand me this letter as I was on the way down regarding the bill that he asked me to pass off. It's addressed to you, Mr. Chairman. That his aide handed me as we were coming in here. Are we ready to present?
Please.
Okay.
More than ready.
All right. I am too. It's been a long day. House Bill 394 is what we've known as the Internet Phishing Bill. If you're not familiar with phishing, it's the email that you get from PayPal or some of the other websites that supposedly is coming from them. It asks you that tells you that your account needs to be updated or there's something wrong with your account. And you go to a website which is not what you think it is. It's not from PayPal, and you put in personal information, and now they've grabbed credit card numbers, etc. So this bill is very similar to the bill we passed last year dealing with spyware, which this is in the same language, but with technology you kind of have to be pretty specific in the way that you address it, and a lot of these are not covered by our current computer or criminal codes. The spyware bill we passed last year became the national model. So with the phishing, we wanted to stick by the same language, and this is very close to that. There's should be two LC numbers in there. There's the one that came out of subcommittee, which is 3063S, and then Senator Staten has a requested substitute that we'd like you to consider, which is LC 283101. It is exactly the same as the one that came out of subcommittee, except for the last section. We have added something that we added on the House side to the spyware bill last year, which is it's on basically page 3, which would hold harmless a business. Let's say if an employee of a business was using the business's computer in an unauthorized fashion to engage in phishing, it would hold harmless that employer and the computer manufacturer, the software manufacturer. This would be if the employee is unauthorized using the company's resources to do this. So it just holds the employer harmless, because we're wanting to go after the person who's committing the act. Other than that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Questions of the author. This came out of the Knox subcommittee?
Yes, sir, it did.
Okay. With a due pass recommendation?
Yes, it did. Okay. Unanimous, if I remember properly.
I have a motion that
I've learned that.
Okay. Any questions of the author? Representative Benton had asked to be heard. If you'll move over, Representative Loudermilk, and I'll ask him to come around.
I do believe the gentleman from the Georgia Technology Authority was wanting to speak on it.
Okay.
Amendment as well.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Let me just say a couple of three things. One, Representative Benton asked for an opportunity to come before the committee with a proposed substitute.
Yes, sir.
That would incorporate a bill that you have had this session.
That was approved, that was passed out by this committee, yes.
That was passed by this full committee?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And was that the night that we were meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Marathon.
And I think we passed it and did indicate some concerns that needed to continue to be worked on, did we not?
Well, I don't know that there were any concerns. There was some changes in the wording, and I do have 3 changes that I would like to make to what I'm going to present to you right now that I think might alleviate some concerns that some people have.
All right. But my point being that because of the hour that we're here, and I wanted you to have an opportunity to be heard, but I wanted to make the members of the committee aware that this is an issue that we did give a lot of discussion to one night. The other point I wanted to make is that Senator Staten, and I just, out of fairness to him, his letter to me basically opposes any riders being attached to Senate Bill 394, and he had indicated some fairly strong feelings in that regard, and members of the committee are welcome to read his letter if they'd like. We only have one copy. I'm happy to pass out copies if anybody wants it. If nobody wants it, I'll leave it as it is. So that's kind of where we are right now, and I'll recognize Representative Benton, and then I will come back and recognize you.
Okay. The letter that Senator Staten has sent you is an indication of his apparently of a change of heart after I talked with him. When I talked with him before, he said that he did not want my bill if it would hurt his bill. My bill goes right along.
You want to see his letter?
It's not necessary.
Okay. I mean, it don't say that, so I just want to.
Well,
just so we're clear.
Well, the senator couldn't remember who to send me to on when I first approached him about the bill, but we'll continue on this. My bill was that I'm asking to be combined with Senate Bill 394 was House Bill 1389 that called for if a person was a victim of identity theft, then they could place a freeze on their credit report. We worked very closely with the Governor's Office of Consumer Affairs. We worked very closely with the people from Equifax and with some consumer groups to come up with a wording of the bill that would be satisfactory to all. And the night of the hearing, the full committee hearing, we had all those people there. They all spoke in favor of the bill. We did change some wording on the bill, and my substitute reflects that change. I took y'all's substitute and the senator's bill and asked Legislative Council to combine the two, which is what you have in front of you. It has LC 292375S at the top. There are a couple of changes that I would like to make to the bill. On page 6, line 3. Yes, y'all have it. It was given out. LC 292375S. It's fairly thick.
I can't find it.
Mine was underneath the folder, so probably here.
Okay. Is it LC 292375S?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does everybody have it now? Does everybody have it now?
If I may get a clarification, is this a substitute of Representative Benton's bill with Representative?
Right.
Correct.
Put them together. Yes, sir. The wording of his bill has not been changed. The wording of the bill that was passed out of this committee a couple of weeks ago has not been changed unless it was changed by Legislative Council to make the two mesh. So there's nothing. Y'all did ask for for an addition for the definition of fraud alert, and that has been added to that. Y'all had asked for that. On page 6, line 3, I'd like for you to delete the word business. Page 6, line 3, the word business. On page 6, line 30, also the word business. And then on page 9, line 3, where it says a part may bring an action individually or as a representative of a class, I want the section where it says as a representative of a class deleted. In other words, a person can bring, we're taking out any type of class action.
You're striking or proposing to strike the words "or as a representative of a class." Okay. Questions of Representative Benton? Vice Chairman Mumford?
Representative Benton, if you take out the class action aspect out of this, how would anybody ever have enough damages to have any enforcement mechanism?
The class action was a concern that Equifax had at the meeting. I guess it would. But you don't you still have under that an individual can.
Yeah, but the problem is an individual doesn't have the resources to sue Equifax. You hadn't heard about that?
Well, if that's something that the committee would want to leave in there, that's fine. I was trying to be accommodating to make sure that there was no problem with these people. Now, if I don't know that the counsel for the Governor's Office of Consumer Affairs, in discussing this with her, felt like that as long as we left in there that they could sue and recover damages, that the class action was not something that would be necessary. And I am just, since I'm not an attorney, I'm just going by what was said to me.
May I follow up?
Sure.
Have you got any idea what, because I mean, I really don't know. I'm asking this. I'm not trying to be coy or cute about it. What kind of damages would an individual likely to have? What happens to an individual who's being wronged?
Well,
this bill is trying to correct.
Well, let's say that someone steals your identity and goes into Best Buy and uses your identity to buy $20,000 worth of computer equipment and a new flat screen TV and a few other things. If you had a credit-free zone and one of the credit reporting agencies gave information out that allowed that credit transaction to go through, then would you not be in line to recover damages?
Further questions? Okay.
I guess he's right.
Chairman Bordeaux, do you have a question, Representative Byrd?
I do.
Okay. You're next.
Thank you. I'll be brief. To Representative Benton, in fairness to you and in response to Mr. Mumford's question, this bill would still allow for an award of attorney fees and expenses of litigation, so that while there might not be much actual recovery for the plaintiff, he could still get attorney fees, which of course is all we care about. And it's a joke. But it would still allow.
Not for some of us. I thought you were serious.
For all of us in the legislature, obviously making money is a joke at this point. But
Not for those of us who are here at 7 o'clock on Friday night.
And who maybe who now have to drive to Savannah tonight. But there still would be a way of recovering damages and still a way to pursue it, because if you do prevail, the defendant would have to pay your your attorney fees.
Yes.
Thank you.
Representative Byrd, and then Chairman Cooper.
I'm somewhat confused here. Is this the senator's bill, or is this a bill that I didn't know that was on our calendar this evening?
The senator's bill has been explained. The senator's bill was explained by Representative Loudermilk. Representative Benton came before us earlier on a separate bill and has asked to be allowed to have considered a version that would of the senator's bill that would incorporate his bill, and that's what he's talking now.
Okay.
And that was why I read the letter from the senator earlier, indicating he was very much opposed to that. No, it's.
He's trying to piggyback on this time session.
It's called hitching a ride.
Hitching a ride. That's
Mr.
right.
Chairman,
Think of what that word says. Piggyback.
Did you want to respond before? Did you have further question, Representative Byrd?
No, I was going to say that I usually confuse it about this hour.
Hey, we're just getting warmed up in this committee. Representative.
Make it easier sometimes.
Okay.
I think the concern of the senator was that by the addition of, and I don't know where the senator is getting his information, that someone was telling him that if my bill was attached to his, that his bill wasn't going anywhere. There's been no one to speak against my bill. There's not been the first lobbyist come to me and say, we're opposed to your bill. There's not been one person in a committee meeting that has said anything detrimental about my bill. Only positive things have been said, and I do not understand, unless he is so afraid that if my bill is attached to his, that somehow it won't come out of Rules Committee. So I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at the discretion of the committee then.
Chairman Cooper.
I didn't have one, sir.
I'm sorry, I thought you did. Chairman Knox, were you asking to be recognized?
I'll defer to Distinguished Vice Chairman of the committee.
I would move, I want to make sure, Mr. Benton, this is your bill and the Senator's bill, LC 292375S.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was prepared
And
by
that is
our legislative council.
committee substitute as amended here today by the amendment. Well, we hadn't had the amendments now.
No, and we haven't dealt with his amendments. Well, there were 3 amendments, and then also I haven't forgotten you.
Well, I'll start out with an amendment. That's the proper procedure, unless you want to hear from some other witnesses.
As I understand, and I think we may be able to do this easy. You had 3 amendments.
Yes, sir.
Two on page 6.
Yes, sir.
Page 6 of LC 292375S.
Yes, sir.
Line 3, strike the word business.
Yes, sir.
Then in line 30, do likewise.
Yes, sir.
Then on page 9, line 3, after the word individually, strike the words or as a representative of a class. Strike those words.
Yes, sir.
Is there objection to any of those amendments?
I object to the last one.
Oh, we'll come back and take that one up. Representative Setzler wants to help you with your objection, I think. Jill.
I just want the committee to know when I combined the 2 bills, LC 283101S did not exist. And so it's the wisdom of the committee to actually combine these 2 bills. The whole issue of subsection I that's in about the Representative Wagner was explaining. If that's what you're trying to do, that is not in 2375.
Chairman Knox,
Mr. Chairman,
you had this in your subcommittee.
Yeah, before we go through trying to amend this committee sub, and it sounds like we're about to start doing some rewrites on it, I want to be sure that we understand the protocols of the House and the Senate both, I think, is that if the author of the bill does not want another bill appended to it, then you know, the protocol is you don't append the bill to it. And I was told quite clearly, we had two opportunities on this in subcommittee, that the Senate did not want this bill attached to his bill. So before we get to considering this, should we get over that threshold issue first of whether or not this committee ought to consider appending the bill to this bill without the consent of the author and with the express objection of the author of the underlying bill?
Okay. Well, and I'm going to represent. I want to recognize Chairman Bordeaux here momentarily. The chair's view that that's not an automatic sort of way to handle it, but I think, on the other hand, that I think members of the legislative body have always given great deference to the views of a colleague from the other side of the aisle. Although I don't know that there's any protocol, to use your word, that would automatically exclude if the senator or a representative, if it were reversed, objective. But I think, and I say this very respectfully to Representative Benton, I think that addresses itself to this body as to whether we want to do that. I mean, I think that's a judgment everybody has to weigh on their own, but I think great deference has always been given. Chairman Bordeaux.
Chairman, I could have said it better. I don't think it's protocol. I think we've always, I think, Speaker Richardson made the point many hours ago that this is that half the members up here have been here. Half the members in the House have been here for 4 fewer years, which is pretty remarkable. I've been here 16 now, and I think 16 years today. Not in terms of hours, but in terms of years. But it's been a long day. But for all the battling we do, we're still colleagues, and it helps a collegial relationship if you don't hijack other people's bills. It hurts. By the same token, we are sworn to uphold the Constitution and pass the best possible bills. If we think it's the best possible bill to put these two together, then perhaps we should. But there's also the issue of working with our colleagues. So
and let me add one more point to that, and thank you for those comments. I'm trying to be helpful. Part of my and again, I mean, I'm going to let this committee do what it wishes to do. But part of the concern that Chairman Knox raised and that Chairman Bordeaux echoed, and I feel, is a little heightened over the senator's not being able to be here to speak for himself, as it were. I mean, and that's something he can't help, I understand. If he were here to, it's not Representative Loudermilk. I mean, he's doing a good job of representing his position. But I would personally, just maybe not as chair, but I would personally feel a little more comfortable about the hijacking process if the victim were present, as opposed to back in Macon.
If I could address that, when I first went to see the senator, I went to see him in the Senate chamber. He had no objections at that time. At that time, he told me that Barry Fleming was going to be handling the bill, and so I went to see Barry. He just got the two Barrys mixed up. And so then when I came down to
they look
check,
an awful lot alike.
Yeah, they just got the last name mixed. And I did go see a Representative Fleming about it. I said he's going to call on you to. And at that time there was no opposition. And so when I came down to check on the bill day before yesterday, I found out that it had already been heard, and it had exited Representative Knox's committee without my attachment, which I thought had been taken care of. It was then that I talked with him and went by his office. He at that time told me that as long as it didn't hurt his bill, that there would be no problem. So that's where I am. I don't know what the letter says, but I have contacted him 3 times about this. Yeah, let me see if his memory's any better.
While you're reading it, Georgia Technology Authority, you want to join in briefly in this discussion, or you want to, or do you want to leave us to our own devices?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I'm Jeff McCord from the Georgia Technology Authority. You want to do that before this?
You're going to speak on the main bill.
To the main bill, yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
We would like to address the underlying bill, the senator's bill on internet phishing. We're certainly very supportive of that, and think that that's a good piece of legislation, and would like to see that passed. We did have one suggestion on that, and I'm flying a little bit blind because I haven't seen the actual substitute, but under the original bill, we had looked at that and would have suggested that you also include, as a definition of business, private and public entities. Our thought on it was that Senate Bill 394 would make it illegal for someone to fraudulently represent themselves as a business, but not as a governmental entity. So we've all seen the phishing websites that you might have gotten through your internet service that represents itself to be your bank or somebody's bank and tries to get you to give them your bank account information and personal information so that they can go clean out your account. We think that this bill would address that, but then those same people would be able to represent themselves as a governmental agency. Maybe, after this legislation were to pass, you might get an email saying that it's the Department of Revenue, and you've got a refund that's due you, and if you'll just enter in your bank account information and your Social Security number to confirm that's your identity, then they'll send that right along to your bank account. The first thing you know, it's going to be cleaned out. So anything you could do in terms of language to include governmental entities to be covered under the statute would certainly be appreciated.
So any questions from the committee members? I have one. Now I've been out most of the time. You're speaking to the main bill, though,
That's
correct? Not
That's
the
right.
substitute. Have you had a chance to look at the sub by any chance? I'm not holding you to nothing. I just want to know.
I've not.
And okay. Well, if there's no questions, I appreciate you taking the time coming down to speak. I'm going to put us on standby for just a minute because I don't know if it'd be appropriate me sitting in this chair right now to make a motion. Well, hold on a second. I'm going to turn over to Vice Chairman Mumford so I can get ready for my motion.
Oh, I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. All right, I'm sorry. I don't know where we are.
Take where we are.
Good. Glad somebody knows what they're doing around here.
Recognize Representative Benton.
Mr. Chairman, since there seems to be a lot of problems with this, and the senator's letter is not what he expressed to me, but I'm going to withdraw my substitute.
I appreciate you doing that.
All right.
Thank you, Representative Benton. And I know the members of the committee will work with you in any way they can as we go on through the process. Further questions? Now we're back on which version did we end up? Which version did you want us to consider?
Mr. Chairman, if it please the committee, I'd like to move forward with LC 283101S. As I mentioned earlier, that is the same version that came out of Representative Knox subcommittee, except for on page 3, lines 8 through 25 were added that would hold harmless a business if an employee was in an unauthorized fashion using the business's computer to engage in internet phishing.
Okay. Further questions on Senate Bill 394? Further questions? Hearing none, the chair calls. I'm sorry, Chairman Knox. Okay. Recognize Chairman Knox for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move do pass Senate Bill 394, and that's committee sub Senate Bill 394, LC 283101S.
We have a motion that we give Senate Bill 394 a due pass recommendation by the version stated by Chairman Knox. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, the chair calls the question. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by raising your right hand.
I'm serious.
All opposed? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I hope y'all get out of here soon.
Well, there's other matters to attend to. The chair is going to ask Chairman Mumford to complete the business. If Senator Hill, if you would come around, I'm not being disrespectful to you, but I've just been informed that your Rules Committee is meeting as we speak.
Yes, they are. Sir.
And I'm sure you'll come up and say good things about this committee and what they've done for you today to change your life, right?
I will, and actually, as a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I thank you for the decision that the offer and the representation was made. I believe we would have the same feeling.
Thank you very much. Would you mind sharing it?
Sure.
And let me ask, if I'm not back by the time y'all are finished on these, don't wait for me.
We'll keep the light on.
Especially Chairman Bordeaux. But
That's funny.
But after we are no longer, after we're totally closed down here, I'm going to ask Diane to remind y'all of something Monday evening. Okay? Would you do that? Okay. Chairman Bordeaux.
Closing prayer.
I have no plans to have this committee meet again for business. Thank y'all very much. Y'all are a great committee. I don't care what they say about y'all out in the rest of this capital.
You know what they say? Well, actually, you've been a good chair except for tonight.
Except for tonight?
Except for tonight.
Except for a Friday night.
Me and Robbie will call you later.
What they say about us is this is the best committee in the House.
They are saying that.
This committee, it's right.
Watch it. I chair a pretty good one over
The
Health and Human Services.
I'll leave you on this thought. We were described about a week ago or 2 weeks ago as Murderers Row. And I've never been prouder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hope it goes well for you.
Yeah. You gotta get the rules too.
Senator Hill, you are here on which LC number and what was the bill?
The first is Senate Bill 408. I believe it's LC 292141S. If I'm not mistaken, is that correct?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee. I appreciate y'all, the hard work that you do. And I think this might be helpful. Is this bill exactly mirrors Representative Lunsford's bill, House bill?
Which the illustrious Chairman Wilford passed out at the meeting. We're so proud of it.
And,
I don't remember it, but.
And
what did I do? Put the or in here?
Chairman, if I could say this, if you pass Senator Judson Hill's bill out, I don't have to go up to Senate rules and file before Mr. Balfour.
All right.
Really appreciate it.
I can understand
on
that.
the exact same bill.
It's the exact same bill.
But he has to go before Representative Earhart.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, let's get to it.
So
it
here
sounds
we
like
are.
This is
Here
fixing
we
to
are.
move out of
and
here.
we've coordinated, and I've been honored to work with Representative Lunsford on this.
Same bill we've already passed.
All right. All right. I agree with all of that. Now, is there anybody else want to speak on this bill? I'm not hearing anybody. I heard a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right. That's the way to run a committee. All right. What's next? What's left?
Okay. We have. That's the. Well, it's a net. You mark it down in the book. That's the quickest one that's ever come out of Judiciary.
And I greatly appreciate it because I know the.
Are we waiting?
I won't tell anybody.
Thank you.
I won't tell anybody.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, maybe we
All
should
right,
tell people
540.
to start a trend.
Let's start 541.
Nice,
Electronic mail address. It's. I've got an LC 292416S. Is that what you have, Senator Hill?
It's a little bit off. If you have a copy of that, it was changed in your subcommittee the other day. I support the changes. Do you need that copy back, or is that extra?
No, that's one
Okay.
you can have.
What Senate Bill 541 does is it helps protect our children from the dangers of content and materials on the internet. It requires that advertisers give the recipients advance notice when their email advertisements contain obscene materials defined in the Georgia Code and other adult-oriented materials. Internet advertisers who solicit recipients with obscene advertising must now write the letters AD, AB, LT in the email subject line to alert recipients. Been working closely with the ISPs, internet service providers. They're in support of this bill. We've included the language that they've requested as well as the language that your subcommittee perfected on this the other day. The purpose behind this is to provide some state, some teeth at the state level. We've got some federal legislation, laws that speak towards that, but I'm honored to represent that we passed House Bill 1059 from the Majority Leader Keene's legislation on sexual predators today, and I'm excited about the hard work that has been done there. It's been a great combined piece of legislation. What this would do is this would provide some teeth when those sexual predators are using email in Georgia to prey on our children, and it would provide enhanced penalties. This would not be considered as a primary indictable offense, which it could be, but more of a secondary add-on indictments as we're already if and when we're already prosecuting somebody for a sexual crime. And it would provide teeth at the state level that currently does not exist in the state law.
All right. Are there any questions for the senator from any members of the committee? Yes, Mr. Bordeaux. Sorry.
I've got to ask this.
Yes, sir.
I don't understand what you mean about it being a secondary way to charge somebody.
If I misstated, I didn't mean to. What happens often, as you're aware of, as a prosecutor, you may indict someone for a handful of offenses. It's often the case that they don't get an individual that's not indicted for one offense. You may have 2 or 3 or 30 indictments against them. We're not going to be sitting here with traffic police or police on the internet, but what we will do is when someone has been identified and preyed on through the internet, and then now that connection has been made and they've now committed a sexual crime, that is probably the most likely application of this, that we would actually be able to go back and look at their hard drive on a computer, if that was accessible, and see that they've used email to solicit these people or entice somebody. There are other applications as well. That's just one example, because but that's just one example.
But you're only saying that that's when it's most likely going to be prosecuted. This is just as easily prosecuted. If I send someone on this committee an obscene, let me see if I can come within it. If I send someone advertising material for something that's obscene, basically, and I don't include ADV, ADLT in the whatever it's called,
subject line,
then I'm guilty of this crime.
Yes, sir.
And
if it's obscene under Georgia law.
Okay. And it's not the obscenity that's going to be prosecuted, it's me failing to include this lettering.
That's correct.
And if, for example, and forgive me for picking you, Chairwoman Cooper, but if I pick you to send this to, and you're offended, she can call the DA's office and have me prosecute it for it.
In a certain world, that is true. I think one of the things we did through the sexual predator legislation, we looked at it extensively, as you all know, as a House and Senate. And I trust, and I think we all trust, the system we set up years and years and hundreds of years ago, in fact, and that's we trust a prosecutor to use their discretion. We choose a judge to rule as a judge who's elected, as well as the prosecutors across the state. And we also rely on the jury to also, those three groups that would insulate bad situations. Bad situations can happen. They happen, in any imperfect system. A bad situation could happen, but the likelihood that they would prosecute, if I walked in tomorrow, or after this bill, if it should pass and be signed by the governor, the likelihood that they would say, great, we've got 5 or 6 instances on your email, and choose to go proceed after that group that sent you that email, if they were to reside in the state of Georgia, it's not someone from California or Germany or England or somewhere. It's pretty low, but it's possible and it's foreseeable.
Well, why couldn't she just swear out a warrant on me?
You'd have to get the police to actually proceed on that. My personal opinion, since you asked the question, is that we do not go far enough in prosecuting certain crimes in Georgia. For instance, marijuana possession. It's just we don't have a zero tolerance policy because we don't have the resources.
Mr. Chairman, if I could ask one quick follow-up.
But it is possible to prosecute marijuana.
Right.
It is possible.
In terms of your definition here, what's being prohibited? Page 1, lines 16 and 17. If I send out, however it would be defined, an obscene nude photo to Ms. Cooper, and don't include advertisement adult in that, that's not a crime under this, is it? I've just sent out the photo.
It would be if I sent my back.
What time are you going to be online tonight?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's try and behave.
Yeah,
is that in the form of a question or a statement?
No, seriously. If I just send the obscene photo without anything else,
yes, sir,
is that advertising? Because this only prohibits advertising material, whatever that is.
I would defer to a legal, opinion looking at the code, but I don't believe that I think advertising is a solicitation to request a response to do something. maybe, and as opposed to just, I send out a photo. That's why we included the words.
Well, why?
Yes, sir.
Why wouldn't you? And I don't mean to interrupt. If I have, I apologize and continue. But is the distinction that if I send out the obscenity, it's not a crime, but if I send out the obscenity with a tagline saying, "For a good time, call my home number," that's the obscenity. Excuse me, that's the crime. Why wouldn't you want to make sending the obscenity without the tagline a crime?
I like the suggestion. Your suggestion seems to be is strike the word advertising.
Yeah.
If that's, yes, sir. I'm sorry, I'm not, this is not my
Oh, I'm sorry.
Didn't mean to wake you up.
I apologize. It's late. I didn't
We had some questions down here first, Representative Knox. If you don't want to wait for him, go ahead, Representative Knox.
No, I didn't see anybody.
It was Bearden.
Oh, it's Bearden.
You want me to ask my question?
Let Knox ask his now. I tried to give it to you. Go ahead, Knox.
I'm understanding what the legislation is to require a notice to anybody receiving this kind of material that is considered obscene under Georgia law, to at least give them an opportunity to turn off their computer if they don't want to see it, or go to a different site, or don't turn on this email, or whatever it is. And that's the main thrust of this, is to give persons an opportunity not to see stuff they don't want to see, and what Code of Georgia says is obscene.
Yes, Representative. That was my primary motive at the beginning, is to provide notification. As I mentioned, maybe in my opening brief remarks, is to provide notification so that any of us who looked at our email subject line would say, delete, move to the next email.
And this is in design, I think, is not to encourage people who might think that they can get by with this as long as somebody's willing to take it, to encourage them not to be sending to people who don't want it, and not, at least we'll have those people not bothered by this or that.
That's the purpose behind actually including words in the subject line. Otherwise, I would have just stated it's illegal to send out obscene information across the internet.
Yes, Mr. Bearden.
Hopefully to clear some things up and show you a best case scenario of how this could be used. Police go in, arrest someone for child porn, and they seize the computer. And they see this type of material from going out. That's for the secondary Veto Amendment Act, correct? And that's probably the way a lot of these charges would be made either.
That's exactly right. That's where you would most likely find somebody is through some other investigation. That's where I was really referencing Representative Bordeaux.
Try to give an example when he's not listening, so that's what.
But that's where my reference was. Is someone's going in and finding this somewhere else. It's not the little guy on the street who's calling the police. It's the investigation for child porn or whatever. You've got add-on offenses that are actually fairly substantial. But the person would have to come from a Georgia source, because obviously we don't have jurisdiction on state.
Another follow-up?
I was just going to say at the perfect time.
All right. Mr. Everson, did you have a question? I think we have some drafting problems with this bill that have been brought to my attention. I want you to look at page 1, line 22 through 23. Any person convicted of violating the provisions of this code section, it doesn't say whether it's a misdemeanor or felony, it says shall be fined not more than $1,500 for each such transmission. Well, I don't know what it makes it. For purposes of this code section, each delivery of a message to prohibited shall constitute a separate offense. C, any person who violates this code section shall be guilty of a felony. So we seem to have two punishments here. Is there a rationale for that?
Mr. Chairman, that's thank you for bringing that to our attention, and it may have gotten lost between versions, and
so one of those needs to come up.
One I would defer to the discretion and judgment of the committee, but
all right,
you're making a good.
Let me ask you about this part of it. You got not less than 1 or more than 20, and then the fine is $1,000 to $500,000. Is that the intention? That's kind of steep, isn't it?
There's big money in this.
It is, Steve. What we did here is we copied the. It was initially not drafted with this strong of a penalty, and we went back and there's some other legislation that I'm not sure if it originated in the House or Senate as I speak here, and we copied the penalties there. But I would defer to the judgment of the.
All right.
It is a steep fine.
We
yes.
got another little drafting problem
Yes,
here.
sir.
On line 9. What is that number?
Line 9 of page 2. Oh, we actually that was corrected in the Senate when it came through, and through an amendment on the floor that I caught, and that is 500,000.
Huh.
It's a new
But
number.
there was a Senate amendment.
So you mean for all of these, for these two to be 500,000?
So line, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, is line 13 should be 500,000 also?
Well, I was just going there. I'm trying to. We got a $500,000 fine, and then we've got these damages.
For 5,000.
Now, what are these actual damages, or $500,000 is the intent? I mean, what if the actual damages are $2, but statutorily you can get $500,000?
I want the case.
Second.
If I knew what this was about, I guess I'd want it.
Yeah, this is a lawyer bringing a bill with an unusually high new specialty.
I would like to suggest to the.
Thankfully, these fines go to the county, to the court,
shucks.
and not to individuals. But anyway.
Well, we had I may have a problem with that. You get injured and the county gets a check. That's I can have a problem.
At 500,000, you could probably split it with the county.
Finder's fee.
I'm teasing.
I would.
I hate to be a
Mr.
member
Chairman,
of Murderers Row, but I'm worried about this bill.
In all seriousness, I would defer to dropping that 500,000 to a lower amount, maybe more reasonable, 50,000 perhaps. It still starts at 1,000. It's the discretion of the court.
What's the will of the committee?
I'd move to change line 3 from 500,000 to fine at 500,000 to $50,000. Make the same change on line 9.
Could we do these
And,
separately?
I think the $5,000 is all right there because that's per for the individual and it's per offense, I think.
All right, and which are we taking B out on page 1?
Yeah. The 22 through 24 strike.
Delete section B?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we'll have to renumber paragraph 11.
Does the language about each delivery of a message constitutes a separate offense anywhere else, or did we just strike that when we deleted B? Ms. Travis.
Thank you. Well, I'm just trying to, when you strike B, there's references to B on page 2, line 11, page 2, line 16. And so, since that's totally gone.
Yeah, I guess no, if we renumber the paragraph, it's going to refer back to what was C then, won't it?
No.
No, it's gone.
No, B will be that where's the top of the page there then.
I'll recognize Mr. Bearden for a suggestion.
Since it's going back to subsection B, which is $1,500 for each transmission, we'll just strike after transmission here for the first code section, which delivery message. But trying to constitute a separate offense, and that takes that out, and then you get into the actual code section and showing that's a felony. Will that work? Maybe I was speaking too quickly there.
You hear what I said, Jill?
I didn't understand you. I'm sorry, Representative.
I'll speak more slowly. I'm tired.
I think that the hour is quite late, and I think that we're all very, very tired.
Right.
And I think to do a complete rewrite of this bill is really not.
Can I see if there's one comment makes it?
All right.
On page 1, line 22, subparagraph D. At the end of the first sentence, at the end of the word transmission period, strike the rest of the sentence. And then in subsection 3, we're going into the penalty phase, shown as a felony, not less than 1 year or more than 20, and the fine amount.
All right, so
Just
B.
Still going back to the
B is now.
Jill Schinger had noticed to take it out completely.
It doesn't work. I mean, I think what you're trying to do is the idea is to manage both the punishment of being a felony and how to divide it up, and then that each transmission is a separate crime and a separate punishment. I think that's what the intent is.
I think you're correct in that, too.
All right. I'm going to recognize Representative Byrd.
Mr. Mumford.
That didn't help much. I don't think it's on. Oh, it is.
Do that again.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this.
All right.
It is late now.
Is there any further discussion there's a motion to table. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of tabling? Yeah, I do need a second. Thank you very much, Mr. Knox. Is there a second?
I've got the discussion.
Well, we haven't got a second yet.
Okay.
Let's see if there is a second. Is there going to be a second to table the bill? There is not. The motion to table dies. Proceed.
Thank you. Could I get a clarification from the author about what you mean on page 2 as to who can bring the civil action? You seem to break it down between a person engaged in the business of providing internet access and then an individual who's adversely affected. Why do you have those two categories?
A person who's engaged in the business. That relates to like the internet service provider and is adversely affected. The individual is a recipient.
What's the internet access service provider, what's their beef in this?
They'd have to be adversely affected by the violation.
How could they be adversely affected?
Somebody cancel their subscription, or somebody cancel their subscription.
And it's a Macy, it's not Chelsea, we know that obviously, but.
Yes, so what, I'm sorry?
And they have to recover actual damages. They have to be damages in that.
Would there be any, and if it weren't this late, I'd do this through the proper method, but would there be any leaning of this committee to just basically, you remember we redrafted the damages section of another bill the other day?
Well, if Representative Longshore was just down here, does he have the same bill? No.
Would it be possible just to take out all this
Okay.
civil action language and substitute that language we passed the other day and simply say that anybody who receives such an obscene email that doesn't have this language in the tagline, whatever it's called, has a right to bring the claim?
Well, Chairman, I think to answer your question, as you well know, we certainly could. We could do that. I am very reluctant at this late hour and at this late date in the session. I don't want to pass a bill out of here that's not in writing at the time it passes out.
Okay.
I'm also very concerned because, frankly, I love the senator and I think this is a fine idea. I must admit to you that I'm not a very computer technical person, and I'm not exactly sure what this bill does and how it does it and what it's getting at, but I do know that it has a lot of language problems that concern me substantially, and that's my personal view of the matter. Now, do you want to make an amendment, or?
Yeah, I'm on a different aspect of it, but yes, sir. I move to amend on page 1. Senator, maybe you can tell me if this is acceptable to you. On page 1, delete on line 16 the term advertising, and on line 18, change that where it says ADV:ADLT, change that to adult:MAT, and make it close single quote period, so that what would be in the line would be adult:MAT. Would that be?
I would agree to that.
You know what? There's a First Amendment guy.
Well, wait, let's see what happens. In other words, that would be for adult materials. It wouldn't be, we wouldn't get into whether it's advertising or not. If I send you obscene material, I've got to give you notice before you open it and see my bare bottom that it's adult material.
May I ask you a question?
Yes, sir.
If I understood your amendment, you just put a quotation mark around advert, ADV, ADLT, instead of a...
No. It would be, that line would read, of the subject, line 18 would be, of the subject line are, open single quote, adult, all caps, ADULT, colon, capital MAT, close single quote, period. Which I think would be the proper way to do that. And then the rest of the sentence would be as is printed.
Can you say, are you suggesting striking from B on down then to eliminate civil penalties also, or I thought I heard you say?
No, this is separate. Let's get this taken care of. And
I'll second that motion, that amendment.
So,
thank you.
That motion, that
You're
amendment.
striking at the word advertising?
Yeah. So I can't send you, if I send you...
Okay. What if I...
Don't you think that this language has some sort of technical significance, and by changing the language, you're making a substantial difference in the way the computer reads the material?
Well, I'm not...
Isn't this some term of art in the...
ADV?
Yeah.
ADLT? It's been used in some other states. I can't quote off the top of my head, but I've done a research across the United States, and that's been used in over a dozen states.
It's a term of art in the industry that you can't just change it and start over again. Yes.
Yes.
We're talking about commercial electronic process differentiating with federal language. There is federal law on this.
The federal law lists either M or AO in the subject line. AO stands for adult.
I couldn't send any of them. I'm sorry.
Off the top of my head, I have some notes on what that stands for. M is mature, 17 and older, in the subject line. And AO stands for adult only. At least in the can span. But since we don't prosecute the state court,
Thank you.
Question.
Senator, can you put a filter on the computer?
I think we all can if we choose to do so. It depends on the level of the filter.
So if we put a filter, if we choose to put a filter on my computer, then all this would be blocked out anyway?
Boy, am I glad to see you.
I hope we treated you with the honor and respect that you deserve.
It was a mixed reception, as a matter of fact.
Uh-oh. I need to have a...
This has been unmixed.
Y'all talking about this one?
No.
This is the second one, Mr. Chairman. Y'all have done a wonderful one first. Representative Bird, to answer your question, here's the challenges. The person who's sending that, even though I can filter it out, I can filter out all sorts of things, we probably are familiar with some of those filters. The person who, the sender, has not violated anything. And that's what we're getting at it as Representative spoke about a minute ago, like going after someone who's done child pornography to the internet.
That's it. Yeah, 531.
Are we through with questions?
Get rid of that. Just get rid of that. Move that. Get rid of this. Page one. Okay. Get rid of it. Move this sentence because it's at the end here.
Okay. Tell me how you really feel. What's our status? Do we have?
We just have a quorum. We gotta stay on the.
No, we got a quorum.
I think you were trying to say A here. I think that's.
I'd like to make a motion.
What's your motion?
I'd like to move to pass by substitute with the Bordeaux and the Knox amendments.
We don't even have a voting on.
Bordeaux is and Knox.
Chairman, if I may, or let us have council speak. She may have.
I'm trying to help fix what, you want to hear some ideas? Or you want to just move it like it is? I don't mean to interfere, I'm just trying to help.
Here's some ideas to make it
Well,
better.
the Bordeaux amendment was to delete advertising from line 16 and to change ADV, ADLT to adult math. And I think the Knox one was to delete subsection B and renumber accordingly. And on page 2 to change the 500 on 500,000 on lines 3 and 9 to 50,000.
Mr. Chairman, if I may speak to that, and let me, just for the sake of some background, which I didn't get into at the beginning, the core language with the advertising material, ADV, ADLT, has been researched in a lot of states across the country. I didn't have my thick file with me, I apologize. Legislative count, if I might speak on Travis's behalf and not trying to put any words in her mouth, I would recommend, after talking with her, that on line 22, section little b, that we strike that whole first sentence. Line 20, page 1, line 22, section B, strike the whole first sentence. And then where it picks up for purposes of this code section, that next sentence, move that next sentence to the end of line 3 on page 2. So it comes back to the end of line 3 on page 2. That line 1 of page 2, this little c would become a little b. Representative Franklin, going toward your motion recommendation, changing that 500,000 down to a 50,000. Then on line 4, changing little d to a little c, just renumbering. On line 9, changing that 500,000 to a 50,000 on page 2 there. Line 11 of page 2, that little b would be re-lettered to a little a. Line 16, the little b would be re-lettered to a little a. Line 19, the little d would be re-lettered to a little c. And finally on line 26, the little d would go to a little c. So we've cured the challenge of the paragraph little b. We've incorporated it there, and we've gone to what I know through my research is the ADV, ADLT has stood up in a number of states.
I came in a little late, so I'm just sort of having to catch on to the conversation. Chairman Franklin asked to be recognized for a motion to do pass.
Do pass by substitute with that, with those amendments.
Representative Beard? He hasn't gotten a second to his motion yet.
I'll second.
We have a motion to give a do pass recommendation to Senate Bill 541 by committee sub.
May I be heard on the motion?
Representative Mumford, Vice Chairman Mumford.
We've been down here about an hour, well, it seems like an hour, about 30, 35 minutes trying to pound a square peg in a round hole. And I would ask the members of this committee to not pass this bill out. I don't think it's ready. So I would ask you to defeat this motion. I think this bill needs to be tabled.
Did you want to be recognized?
Yes, sir.
For what?
Per motion.
Substitute motion. What's your motion?
due respect to Senator, make a motion that we table this. Well, I know how the way you did it all.
You want
You could have said. He's so bad.
Second.
I think it's the third at this point.
I have not heard a second.
Second.
Okay. We now have a substitute motion.
Third?
Well, he made one and he made one, so I figured the two motions
To
counted.
lay Senate Bill 541 on the table. Did you want to have discussion?
I just want to say, I don't know if, I hope this will pass. I mean, no disrespect to the senator by supporting it, but we're talking about a felony that carries a fine of $500,000, I think, civil penalties about something that's very serious, and while it may just be used as a secondary type of prosecution tool, it may also get someone in trouble for sending me an obscene message that I'm offended by, but they didn't mean any crime by. It needs more work. I'll support you. I'll try to help you with it, but it ain't ready tonight. It's not going to be ready tonight, and I hope we'll table it.
Is there further discussion on the substitute motion? Hearing none, the chair is going to call the question on substitute motion. All in favor of laying Senate Bill 541 on the table, please indicate by raising your right hand.
It's my left. I know. Did he count me?
I hope
Count me.
All opposed? Appears that the motion has prevailed, 7 in favor and 2 in opposition. We'll have further discussion, Senator Hill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 1 for 1. I'm happy to have
The Braves would give you a bonus for batting 500.
I think that you have learned a lesson, not to be the last person at the last meeting.
On a Friday night.
On a Friday night when
I'm about
we're
to
all
cause y'all to
dead.
be in recess to be able to stay so long. Thank you very much.
That's completing the business.
Appreciate it.
Man, just a moment. We're going to be adjourned, but don't leave.
Everybody else leave.
No, everybody else can stay. And when the control room knows that we're at ease.
We all are just.
Is everybody driving?